Okay, so today we start our deep dive into Capture One. Just a couple things that I'm going to talk about before you actually launch into Capture One. Again, I need everybody here on a computer that either has Capture One on it, your own laptop, or one from the school. Right now, the latest that I looked at, they're getting really aggressive about their educational pricing. And so the last time I looked, which was only a couple days ago, the student pricing for Capture One right now for the subscription model, there's two different models that they do. You can either buy it outright and own it, or there's a subscription, and the current subscription for students is $62 and change for a year. So it's not really a deal breaker. Again, so the way they work that is that they don't charge you every single month. They'll charge you the 62, I think it's 70 or 62.50, whatever it is. They charge you that all at once, and then you just have access to Capture One for a year. We talked a little bit about this last week, but I'll go over it again right now. The strategies that you need to think about as you are deciding whether you want to buy the program outright. If you buy the program outright, the going price is usually $299. But at any rate, if you want to buy if you want to think about different strategies, are you better off buying it, or are you better off doing the subscription model? The way it basically works is that every time they go to a major upgrade, so the difference being is that right now they're on version 21 or 22 or 24, I forget what version they're on right now. If you're going from like version 24.1 to 24.2, that's considered really minor. All of those are free, whether you're on subscription or paid. But when you do a major jump, so when they go to 25, what ends up happening is that your 24 will still work. There's no problem with that. But if you want to be on 25, you actually then have to buy the upgrade. And buying the upgrade usually is $200. So brand new, $300, upgrades, $200 if you're doing the buying outright model. If you're on the subscription model, all of it is free no matter what happens. So the minute there's an upgrade, whether it's minor or major, you get it free. It doesn't matter as long as you're on the subscription part. So the question becomes, are you the kind of person that needs to be on the cutting edge of software all the time? So if you are that person, the subscription model is better for you. In the end, you'll save money as opposed to buying it every single time there's an upgrade. If you're like me and you don't really need the latest greatest with every single thing that happens, you can actually skip generations of the software. So let's say they're on 24 right now, my 24 is working. When they come out with 25, a large part of what 25 will be about is it'll be a new color engine, and it will have greater camera support. All the cameras that I own are supported by Capture One 24, so I don't need the additional camera support. There also are other features. Again, they're just like Photoshop. They're rolling out a lot of AI into this. Their color engine gets better every single time they do it. So, but I don't feel like I need that every single time. So I can put off. So let's say I skip version 25 and maybe even version 26, maybe even 27, and then I buy 28, which will be 3 or 4 years from now. Well, then I'm spreading the cost of that $300 or the $200 upgrades over 3 or 4 years, and so it's cheaper for me in the end to actually own it as opposed to doing the subscription model. Does that make sense, everyone? Difference in this? So just think about in doing that where you're sort of at in this. What I will say, and I know I said this last week, is that this is the de facto for every single professional studio all over the world. Nobody is using any software other than this. So for you to become proficient in it is your ticket out of this school and into a career in the photography industry. And that to me is worth $62 a year. So I'm just going to throw that part out really quickly. There are multiple versions of Capture One that you need to know about. So the ones that really truly matter are just the regular Capture One Pro, which is what you're normally used to working with and that we work with here. They also have another Capture One, they call it Capture One DB. It stands for Digital Back, and that is only for users, only for people who are using Phase One digital backs. So Phase figured that There's no way to actually use their digital backs without using this software. So if you spend 30 grand on a digital back, they really figure they need to give you the software for free. But it is a somewhat locked version of Capture One. It will do everything in the world that you want it to do with your digital back. So it will allow you to shoot tethered. It'll do all your processing. It'll do all of that stuff. It does not support, the DB version does not support Canons or Nikons or Sonys or any of that. This is strictly dedicated for Phase 1 cameras and Phase 1 digital backs. So just so that you know that there's a different version of that. The current version now, I believe, they've changed this in recent years, but it used to be that when you bought a license, you could activate your Capture One on 3 different machines. I think that's down to 2 different machines now. So you could put it on a laptop and a desktop at home or something like that. Frankly, to be honest with you, nobody would know, but you could actually split the subscription with somebody else as long as whoever else you're splitting with promises to only activate it on a single machine. They could have one activation, you could have the other activation. It would be a way to actually get the cost down even more. When you do the activation part, it requires that you're connected to the internet. And the reason I mention this is that if you are a smart digital tech, you've actually got a hard drive that you're carrying around with you that's got everything that you would need to run a computer and do whatever it is you do as a digital tech. So the reason I bring this up is let's say that I'm out on location and I was stupid and I only brought my laptop, and that's the only laptop that I've actually got. And we're out in the middle of nowhere and my hard drive, the internal hard drive of my computer fails. If you, as a digital tech, whip out your external hard drive that's got a complete bootable system on it, meaning that you can actually start up a computer using that external hard drive, then you save the day, because we can plug your hard drive into my computer, because the problem with my computer is not that the computer is dead, it's the hard drive that's on the inside of it is dead. If you guys have, again, a system that you can boot any typical Macintosh with, then we could actually boot your external to use to get up and running again. Does that sort of make sense? I feel like I just butchered myself right through that whole conversation. So anyway, something to actually keep in mind about all of this. The general requirements, these have been the requirements for Capture One for years. I don't know what the current listing is. The original requirement was 4 gigabytes of RAM. It's now 8 gigabytes of RAM minimum. That's probably a given, even if they don't list it that way. You also need at least 10 gigabytes of free hard disk space. So if you're going to run Capture One, you need to be checking about what your available free space is. Everybody has gone through major iterations in terms of cabling for different cameras. So there's been Thunderbolt, there's been USB 2, USB 3, now there's USB-C. I mean, all of these exist in different iterations. My advice to you is that you carry something like this. Again, as a digital tech, if you've simply got something like this is a USB-C hub that will allow me to plug anything into it. I can plug all sorts of USB devices into this. I can even plug in, there's a Thunderbolt 2 converter to USB-C that I can also plug into this. This has also got a card reader built into it. So this is another thing to think about. If you're actually working on location and all of a sudden you can't tether or the shit hits the fan or whatever, your fallback is always to shoot to card, but then you can read the card right away to make sure that your exposures are correct, make sure that focus held, make sure that you don't have motion, make sure, to really be able to check your stuff. So even though I strongly encourage everyone to always shoot tethered, this is a fallback that allows me if that can't happen. Sometimes when I'm doing tracking shots, I'm either on a what they call a doorway dolly, or if I'm old school, I'm in a wheelchair, or what do they call? What's the wagon, the red wagon that we all had as kids? Yeah, the flyer, the something flyer, right? Is it something flyer or is it just flyer? Anyway, a lot of times when I'm doing tracking shots, I'll sit in that little wagon with my computer and have my assistant drag me down the sidewalk or down the street, whatever. Radio flyer, there you go. Doing tracking shots the whole time. It's really difficult to do that tethered. Not impossible, but difficult. So a lot of times I will shoot to card when I'm doing stuff like that. And then again, go right back immediately, throw this into a computer and actually look at my images, review my images to make sure that everything is A-okay. You should never, for the rest of your life, plan on being without your computer when you're actually shooting, in my opinion. Older versions of Phase, if you take a look at the digital camera backs that they actually have here, there's a FireWire connection on those in addition to a USB 3 port. It's all legacy stuff. Nobody uses that stuff anymore. However, it would be worth your while if you get a gig as a digital tech or as an assistant, either one, to check with the photographer to make sure they're not running an old series Phase back that is FireWire only. If that's the case, you need to be ready for that. We talked last week about creating a separate user for Capture One. Didn't we do that? We got all through that whole part last week. Okay. Again, that's just the reason I do that is that I don't run any other software. I don't do anything. I don't do any updates. I don't do anything to anything on that partition so that it stays stable and clean, and I don't need to worry about that part. So it's just again, I know all of you guys have had trouble with tethering and capturing and all of that kind of stuff, is fair to say, right? All right, so for the Macintosh people, we're going to talk just a little bit about troubleshooting here. How many of you guys have had trouble tethering in the past? It goes without saying. So if you feel like, oh my God, it's just the school and their shitty computers, so it's not. Everybody has this problem. It happens all the time. Usually the cabling is the #1 suspect. So if you are on a Macintosh, you can do this with Windows as well. I just don't have the Windows computer here to show you how to do it. But it would be basically going through devices. But at any rate, if you plug a camera in to your computer, and then for the Macintosh people, so today is going to be about hands-on. If you guys plan on listening to me talk for 4 hours, you are going to fall asleep in the next 30 minutes, and you won't wake up until the class is over, and you'll hate your life because you'll miss all of this. I want you doing as much hands-on as I can possibly get you to do this. So when I say, okay, I'm going to go up to the Apple menu right now, if you're on a Mac, I want you to go up to the Apple menu with me. I want everybody to do as much of this. Again, develop muscle memory, that whole experience doing this. So at any rate, I'm going to come up to, again, I'm having trouble tethering. I'm going to come up to my Apple menu. I'm going to come down to About This Mac. Again, depending on the version of software, system software you're using, it may say something a little bit different, like System Preferences is now called System Settings. It's the same thing, but anyway, just to realize that that's going on. But About This Mac is what we're really looking for. This window will open up, and you want to click on System Report. And when you click on System Report, you'll have a menu all the way on this left-hand side over here with a cornucopia of things. You want to click on USB right here. And then you want to scroll through all of this and see if you see a Canon camera attached. If you do not see a Canon camera attached, then you can be damn well sure your computer can't see the camera. So there's an extremely good chance that the problem is the cable. But nonetheless, this is just a place to go. If you are in Capture One and you can see your Canon camera here, but Capture One cannot see your camera, then you need to go through the typical troubleshooting that you do for Capture One. So the typical troubleshooting that you would do for Capture One, if you cannot tether, and you've looked at that and you can see that the computer does see your camera, then what you need to do is you need to quit your camera, turn it off. You also need to quit Capture One, reboot Capture One, and then reboot your camera. If it shows up, then you're good to go. If it doesn't show up, then you need to take the next drastic move, and that is a total restart on your computer. So you restart it from the beginning. You also turn your camera off and you pop the battery out of your camera. We're trying to get your camera to reset to its defaults. Some of the other problems that can show up in this, there are menu settings on certain cameras that allow you to dedicate that the camera will only shoot to a computer or only shoot to a card. Now some people feel like that they get a more stable connection if they go in and make that change. The problem is that if somebody previously has set up your camera to only shoot to card, no matter what you do, you've already told the camera, don't talk to the computer. That's what you've gone in there and done. So again, at that stage of the game, your best move is to reset the camera to its defaults. Is there any liability with resetting a camera to its defaults that anyone in this room is aware of? Judith? I'm sorry, what? Yeah, exactly. So in a Canon camera, and I don't know if this is true for Sony or Nikon, but for Canons, the default format for capture is a JPEG, not a RAW file. So when you reset your camera body to its defaults, you will no longer be shooting in RAW. You will only be shooting in JPEG. So just to remember that caveat exists. Are there questions about this part? Shoot. All right, so click on more info. And here you go. So, yes. Okay. So at this stage of the game, I need everybody to fire up Capture One. If you get all the default screens and everything, whatever, just say no, yes, yes, no. Don't show this to me ever again, whatever you need to say to actually get into it. I'm not going to start with you loading the the session that I gave to you quite yet, because I want to talk about what that really is and how that really works. So I just need you to fire up Capture One on whatever computer that you're actually on. Actually, I take that back. We will go ahead and launch that session. So, but I want to talk to you about the best ways of actually doing that part. So, if you've already got a session that's actually up and going, you can actually just come up to your File menu, click on the drop-down menu, and say Open, and navigate to that session, navigate to the session that I've actually asked you guys to copy over. That's one way of doing it. Easier way I think of doing it, I'm going to cancel out of this, is if you go to the session, so if everybody can go out to their desktop, their Finder, wherever this whole thing is, and simply click on the Capture One working pro working files. Inside this, you've got two different folders. You've got one that's actually a session that was created. So it's this 20200421_CCC_C1 Pro Demo. And then there's another thing that's just called Compact Flash Card Imitation. I want to be able to go through how we do imports off of cards for you. And since I don't have a card for everybody here along with a card reader, we're just going to use this as a pseudo, that's why I call it a card imitation here. You don't need to worry about this part. But if you click open the, or open up the session folder itself, inside it, you guys probably won't see these two backup listings. You'll probably just have, but you might see it. These are the preference files for the session, and that matters here. In Capture One, we'll get to it in just a second, but inside of Capture One, you can create either a catalog or a session. A catalog in Capture One works exactly the same way it does in Lightroom. It actually every single thing you shoot for the whole rest of your life goes into one catalog, and then you use keywording and search functions and all of that kind of stuff to sort your files and to do all of that. But everything is all in one place. Most pros do not work that way. Most pros work with sessions because pros are actually shooting for different clients all the time. And so why on earth would I have one catalog that has Saks in there along with Neiman Marcus, along with Bloomingdale's? I would never do that. I have discrete sessions that exist for Bloomingdale's, discrete ones for Saks, discrete ones for it. Do you guys, that makes sense to everybody? Okay, so if you want to open a session though, the easiest way to do it is to simply find the preference file for the session. You'll see there's 4 folders in here. This will be true of all sessions. You'll probably only have one. The reason I've got multiple versions of these session preferences is that they are multiple versions of Capture One. So when I first actually launched this and did this, It was back at Capture One like 7 or 8, somewhere like that. I'm now on version 21. So whenever you go to open a session and your Capture One has been updated, it's going to offer you the option to update your session to the latest, greatest version. In most cases, we would say yes to that because then you can take advantage of the most current version of Capture One. You don't need to worry about any of your captures in terms of if we needed to be backward capable. I'll show you how to do backward compatibility. But nonetheless, if you double click on the preference file, that will launch Capture One and it will open your session into Capture One. It's just the easiest way to do it. If you are doing it from within Capture One, you would open up you go to your file menu to the open window here, and then you would navigate to that very same folder. And then again, double click on the session preference file. This is what you would actually open, and click open, and the whole thing will open up. So when you guys open up, do you see thumbnails that look something like this? So did it give you an option to upgrade? Okay, then I'm going to show you guys how to fix it. So we'll fix this right now. A couple of other people are having the same problem, right? You're getting an error message saying that it can't do whatever it can't do. Okay, so this is, well, troubleshooting 101. That's what we're going to start with today. Okay, so let's say that this has happened to you, or you have a corrupted session. All of this can actually happen to you. So the trick to this is that we can build a brand new session for this and then copy all of our raw files into that new session. So I'm going to show you how to do that part right now. So if you're in Capture One right now and you've gotten any of those error messages, go ahead and click OK. If you're on the start video, or do you want to do that, click OK to that, whatever. You simply need to be in Capture One, and what you need to do is you need to be able to see the menu part that goes across. I'm in Capture One 21. The computers here are Capture One 20. So is everybody at least inside the program? Are we good on that part? Okay. Say what? Okay, so guys, this is a great trick to know, because again, if the session itself gets corrupted, you want to be able to carry on. You don't want to actually lose all the stuff. So you want to be able to like carry on. So that's what we're going to do right now. So I need everybody inside of Capture One to come up to the window menu that's up at the very top. Click on this drop-down menu, come down to Workspace, and click on Default. I want everybody on the very same one. You'll see in here there's a set of pre-canned workspaces in here that you would use for different reasons. But nonetheless, if you click on the default, then all of us should be pretty much on the same page. You should have what they call the viewer is in the middle. You should have a browser on the side over here, although you don't have any files in there yet. But then the main thing that I care about is the tools that are at the very top, and then these icons that are right here. These are called tool tabs. If you actually hover over a tool tab, it'll actually tell you what it is. So this is the library tool tab, and you'll see underneath it, it has library. If you click on the one next to it, this is your camera tool tab. or the capture tool tab. Again, this is where all your camera settings will ultimately be. If you go to the next one over, this is the lens correction tool tab. So this is where you can talk about adding a profile to remove vignetting or chromatic aberration of a lens. Again, all of these things exist in Camera Raw and Photoshop as well. The next one over is color. So this is your color editor here. The next one over that looks like a histogram is your exposure. The next one over looks like the little magnifying glass. This is actually where you get into sharpening, noise reduction, all of that, but this is also where your navigator is. The next one over is styles and presets. We get to this at the very end of the semester. And then finally, the next one over is actually your info tab. So this is your metadata tab. So we're going to start with the library tab first, and we're going to create a new session. Now there's two ways to create a new session. This is also where you would create a new catalog. Unfortunately, the computers are set to default here. The computers that the studio has are set to default to, I did start a recording, didn't I? Yeah. Oh, on the very top for the tools? Yeah, don't worry about that. Okay, so in the library tab, this is where we're going to start in the library part. So if you click on that part, so we are going to create a new session that we're just going to pretend for all of it, and myself included right here, that something is corrupted, something is wrong with the setup that I've got right here. So I'm going to build a new session. I'm going to bring all of my raw files into that new session, and hopefully we will be good to go. All right, so to do this, there's two ways you can start a new session. The way most people do it is this little plus that's sitting right next to the session that's outlined right here. If you click on this little plus, you'll get a drop-down menu, and you can either do a new session or a new catalog. So I want you to pay attention to the order of this. New session is first, new catalog is second. The second way you can do this is up to the file menu, and in the file menu you can click and come down to new catalog or new session. These are the exact reverse of these. Whoever is doing their user interface should be shot. Why would you do it session catalog here and then catalog session here? Tell me. Anyone, please. All right, just a minor gripe. So I'm going to click on the drop-down menu right here. I'm going to say new session. It's going to bring up a new dialog box, and we want to name this new session. So I'm going to use it named after the version that I've already got up here, and we'll just add a version 2 in there, whatever, just so that I know it's the difference. So for this name session, we've talked about naming convention in this class, haven't we? Okay, so again, I use that very same naming convention. So again, we're not naming it after today, we're naming it after the date that was on this when this was actually shot or created. So 20200421. Can anybody tell me anything about this session? April 21st, 2020, right? That's a huge amount of information it can give me right there. Underscore CCC, what does that mean? Exactly, underscore, and then it's C1 Pro, C1 PRO demo, and I'm just going to do V2 so that we know it's different from the other one. Okay, so in this case, a couple things about this dialog box that you really care about here. There are people, I don't know why they do this anymore, but there are people who will actually separate all of their captures from a session. If that's the kind of person that they are, you want to tag the capture folder with this. Do not do this right now. I'm just going to show you what some people will ask you to do. You can actually copy this name by selecting it and then doing Command C to make a copy of it, or go up to the edit menu and do copy. Then come down and they'll do a dash here and then a paste. And so this is what their capture folder will look like. The only advantage of doing this is that if you're going to remove your capture folder from the session, which in my opinion is something you never want to do, you lose too many things. You get all the raw files, but you'll lose so much else here. So I do not suggest doing this. I've even had clients in the past that will do this they'll also do a dash for selects, for outputs, and for trash, for the whole 9 yards here. I don't do that part, but I just wanted you to know that different clients will actually ask for different things. Some clients will have a very specific naming convention that they want you to use for this. In that case, you would not use this naming convention that I've given you. You would use exactly what the client wants you to use. Then this open in a new window right down here is one of the most dangerous things they've added to Capture One. The problem with this is that if you click on this, what will happen is that the original session that you already have open will remain open, and this will open a brand new one on top of the old one. And it expands to your whole screen, so there's no way you know you've got two sessions open. But the problem is that if you have a camera that is attached to an original session and then you build a new one here and say open it in a new window, you will never be able to attach a camera to the new session because the camera is attached to the old session that is still open. Does that make sense? This is the thing that can fuck so many people up. You hate a digital tech on a job and you want their job, go in and build a new session and open in a new window, laying it on top of the old one. They will never be able to connect a camera and they won't understand why. The only thing that will save them is if they're smart enough to do a restart of Capture One. See, I'm giving you all the skinny about how you get the people whose job you want fired. Right? Why not? Okay. So anyway, you don't want to connect this part right here. So is everybody good on this part? All right. So go ahead and say okay. Immediately, wait, before you say okay here, well, I'm going to just do another session really quickly just so you can see where it goes. You don't need to do another session. Just watch this. I just want to point out where this thing is going to go. So in your new sessions, you always want to put these in your picture folder. Now, there's a couple of things to think about doing in this. A lot of you are actually attaching external hard drives and you shoot to the external hard drive. The problem with that is that the tethering system that we use is that every one of these files that you're doing for a Nikon or a Canon web, it's in that 20 to 30 megabyte range, and you are banging these out, 10 a minute, 5 a minute, something like that. I mean, people are hammering these things out, right? All of that information has to be written to your external hard drive. And so all of it has to go through the connection of your external hard drive. So your external hard drive could be an SSD, but if you are pushing it through a USB 3 cable, it is incredibly slow. If you're doing it through a USB-C cable, it's better, but it's still incredibly slow. And so you'll end up with a lag, with a backup, and you will have art directors are always screaming, why am I not seeing this fast enough? Why am I not seeing it fast enough? How come what I'm looking at on screen is 4 frames behind what this person's shooting, 10 frames behind what this person is shooting? You never shoot to an external hard drive. By the very same token, you never shoot to a server. It's the exact same problem. You do not want to be connected to some server and actually using that as the place where your session lives and where these capture files are actually written. You always want to do this to your internal hard drive. It is by far, hands down, the fastest connection of storage that you can possibly get on a magnitude of, an exponentially faster speed. So what you want to do, if you're worried about all of this, if you're worried about having a backup, if you're worried about getting your files off of your computer, all of that kind of stuff, what we will get to later in the semester is you can actually set up a software to automatically copy your the folder that we're actually going to use right here to do our capture to your hard drive, so that as you're shooting along, you will actually have a pretty much instantaneous backup to an external hard drive of what you're shooting to your internal hard drive. Does that make sense, everyone? Are we good on this part? So when do you guys back up? If you're shooting to a computer, when do you back up? Say what? Do you back up as you're shooting? So you back up at the end of the session. So basically the end of the day is when you back up, right?
Not at the end of the 24-hour day, but if I'm in Lightroom and I'm done editing for a little bit, I back it
So when you quit Lightroom, you back it up.
Yeah.
Right. Do you realize that you're only backing up the database and not your files?
Well, no, it's,
Thing is that the database is meaningless without the files. The files can do everything without the database. So what you're backing up is essentially convenient, but it's not by any means a backup. So when do I back up? We'll just tell you this right now. I back up when depends on how my shooting is going. Typically, again, I shoot fashion, and there will be a model will go off of set. They will then be dressed in the next outfit, get it pinned, get it styled, and come back on set. That gives me a window to actually back up, and so that's when I'll back up. But if I'm shooting two models, they will simply rotate them. So the minute one model leaves the set, another one goes on. I don't have time to back up. So at that stage of the game, I back up at lunch and then at the end of the day. So just keep that in mind. Again, what I'm going to show you at the end of the semester here will be a trick where you can actually set this whole backup process to be happening automatically. And so it's not something you need to pay attention to. You just need to plug in a hard drive, launch the software, and it will monitor your capture folder the entire day and continue to back it up. So you'll have a continuous backup. Does this sort of make sense to everyone, what we're talking about here? We'll talk about backup strategies much later on. So anyway, this is where you always want to put this guy. We will talk about possibly using templates later. The advantage of this has been greatly diminished over time, but nonetheless. So I'm going to cancel out of this because I've already created my new session folder. So with this new session folder actually set up, you will see that there are session folders that exist along this edge along the left-hand column right here. Would it help if I turned off this light for you guys to see, or can you see this part? Better or hang on. Better or worse? Better. Okay. So what's important to realize about these session folders is that these are actually aliases to your capture folder, selects folder, output folder, and trash folder. These can be changed, and this becomes a problem when we go through this. The problem is going to be this. I can designate any folder in the world as my capture folder. That means that this alias will actually point to that folder, which is not necessarily the capture folder of this session. And I'll show you what that means in just 1 second. But one of the things that you need to know about Capture One that's really critical, something to keep in mind, is it's very right-click friendly. What does that mean? If you're in a Windows world, Windows actually has a 2-button mouse. They have a left button and a right button. The left button works like a mouse in any computer in the world, but the right button actually gives you contextual menus. And a contextual menu doesn't exist. Well, they exist in Macintosh, but you don't have a right button mouse. So if you are working on a trackpad, to get a right button click, you can actually do a 2-finger swipe down your trackpad. That should give you a right click. The easier possible, more definitive way of doing it would be to hover over the thing that we want to right click on, hold down your control key, and then click. And you'll notice here, when I do that, I get a drop-down menu. These drop-down menus exist all over Capture One. So if you don't know how to do something, your first goal is to probably right-click this guy, and it will give you all sorts of information. With this thing right-clicked, you can come down here and say, show me this in the Finder. In your Windows World page, I can't swear to this, but it should actually offer to show you wherever that file is, someplace on your hard drive, wherever you're saving this. Is that fair to say? When you right-click on this capture folder, do you get a destination where it can show you where this where the file is? Okay, I need everybody to go ahead and do this. So go ahead and say, show me this in the Finder. This is the fastest way to actually get to your Finder. Get to your Capture One selection. You don't need to know where it's, whether you put it in the Pictures folder or in the Download folder or wherever else you put this. This will take you immediately to it. And this part's critical on here. So this is something that you want to do because people can inadvertently set up a different file to be a capture folder. So what do I mean by that? If we go back into Capture One right here, hold down your control key. I'm going to do the same thing on this capture folder. Hold down my control key, click, and say, I want you to show me this in the library. Now the library is actually this part of Capture One in here. This is the library. And if you go to your system folders right here and start to scroll down, it's actually going to, this is a snapshot of what is on your desktop, what's on your internal hard drive. So if we start to work our way down here, you'll see this is the capture folder right here for this session. And you can see it's got a little icon next to it. Is this making sense to everybody what's going on here? Okay. You can see this little icon that is of a camera. That's designating this as the capture folder. There's another one that looks like a gear is my output folder, a selects folder, and my trash folder. Don't do this, but look what's going to happen right here. I'm going to actually change this. I have got a Christmas card from 2013. This is a picture of my mom and my niece. I am also going, don't do this, just watch my screen. I'm going to hold down my control key and right click on this folder, and I'm going to say, set this as my capture folder. You will now see that that little camera icon is there, but now when I go up here to say capture folder, show me this in the Finder, it is a completely different folder. It is now the Christmas card folder that's got all of this stuff in it. It doesn't have anything to do with my original capture. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that these aliases here point to what you tell it to point to. In the beginning, when you create a session, the capture folder in that session is by default the capture folder. But if you change these, that is no longer the case, and this can fuck you up. If you do not understand that these do not have to point to the session folders. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, to fix this, I'm going to go back to my selects folder. Again, this is just navigating. Hopefully you guys are doing this with me. Hold down the control key, right click, and say, show me this selects folder in the library. This is now the selects folder. This was the capture folder for this session. I'm going to then right click on the capture folder to again make this my capture folder. And now that I've reestablished that, when I come up here, this alias is now pointing to that same capture folder that's in my session again. Did that whole roundabout make sense to you guys? Okay. So what I would like everybody to do now, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to right click on this and say, show me this in the Finder. We now need to do most of our work in the Finder. So I'm going to say hide others. And I've got a lot of windows that are open. I'm going to close these up so that this whole thing is a little less confusing to you guys. All right. So this is the folder that I've actually got. This is a habit that you should get into. When you guys do a copy from one window to another, do you always do it in the same direction? Pretty much. That's like a little pregnant. So this is what I mean. I'm actually going to, I've got a small piece of software here that allows me to place my windows. So I'm going to do a new window up here on the top and just place this up on the top. I always copy top to bottom. Bottom is always my destination. I never reverse this. You guys need to get into that habit. This is just data management 101. If you are copying in either direction and it doesn't matter to you, you can inadvertently overwrite files that you're trying to keep. Very dangerous thing to do. You don't want to do that. This is my version 2 of the folder right here. You can see my capture folder is empty. I'm going to come over to my pictures folder on the top now. I'm going to do a sort by name, not by date added. And I'm looking for that original Capture One version file. It's this one right here. Inside this capture folder, this is the file that I gave you. But not only do I have all of my raw files in here, you'll see that there's 2 files in here that are IIQ files. What the fuck are those? It's not just the Mamiya, it's all the phase cameras. That's what that IIQ stands for. Sometimes, and it's unfortunate, sometimes phase uses the extension TIF. The thing is, all raw files are TIFF files, but it's very confusing because people believe it's actually not a raw file, that it's been processed, but it is. So at any rate, all of my raw files are here, but look what else is actually in this as well. There's this Capture One folder in here. If you click on this, again, you guys, if you've got this, you should be able to navigate to this version of it and be able to look at this on your own computer. These are, if we take a look here in the settings group right here, these COS files, these are XMP files for everything that I've actually processed. So this has got the white balance information, this has got metadata in it, this has got keywording, this has got star rating, all of that exists in this folder. So if we're going to copy this into my new session, so again, the rebuild session, this is my corrupted session, this is my new one. You want to make sure that you bring everything in here, not just the raw files, but specifically this Capture One folder as well. You can also see a capture session can hold JPEGs, it can actually hold PDFs, it can hold Word files, it can hold a bunch of other stuff as well here. But at any rate, so for me to actually copy this over, I'm going to simply click inside the folder. Again, this is the corrupted version that I've got right here. I'm selecting in the capture folder. Command A will select everything, and then click on this and simply drag it down into this new folder and let go. So when you do that, then you come back into your Capture One session right here, and you should get these to actually populate your folder, and it should have your star ratings, the color ratings, any tagging that we've done in here, all of that should have come in here with it. Did this work for everyone? So for the people who could not get a session open, do you now have a session open that's got all of these images in it? Did you do the copy? Then, no, wait, go back into Capture One. This is a great trick. If you don't see any of these thumbnails on the side over here, have you clicked on the capture folder? Click on the capture folder, and these will all show up. Did this work for everyone? Does anybody not have the files? Alright, so all of these will be copied to this folder. So you're doing right here. So you can't make drag it off there. Let go. Let's do it quick. Everyone. Everybody else has got them all, right? So this we can use all of this kind of stuff as a nightmare to work with. So if you start that with column instructions, let's see what this folder is going to be. So this is going to be destination here. And then we can do a new window. And this is the window again. Also going to use this column. And here is the right here. So for those of you who pulled all of those out of the original, just remember now, if you did this on a hard drive to your computer, you need to save this new capture session to your hard drive because this is the one that we're going to be working with now. Does that make sense to everyone? We just left behind the old one. We created a new one. So this is the same method. This right here is how you downgrade. So if somebody gives you a Capture One session that was done in Capture One 24 and you're running Capture One 12, you can do this exact same trick and you can get all of those files opened up into Capture One 12 and then go back. Does that sort of make sense to everyone? So it's just downgrading in Lightroom is a nightmare, but this is the easiest way to downgrade in the world. Are we good on this part? Okie dokie. So now that we're actually in Capture One, there's a couple of things that we can do around in here to sort of change stuff up. You can actually hover over, so again, this big thing right here is called the viewer. This thing on the side right here is called the browser. In the old days of Capture One, the browser used to be along the bottom. You can actually change that if that's what you want to do, or if there's a reason to do that. To change it, you come up to the view menu and come down to, not viewer, but browser right here. And on this you can say customize, and you can actually change this to auto hide, which means it'll go away, which will give you a little more screen real estate until you hover over it and then it'll come back. But you would click on this place below, and when you do that, it'll run down along the bottom instead. I'm going to Command Z that, and Command Z does not work to change this. So to get it back the way it was, up to the view menu again, down to browser, and say place this on the right. When you get this on the right, you can actually then hover over where the browser and the viewer touch each other, and you will get a double-headed arrow. You can click on that double-headed arrow and drag to make your thumbnails larger, but you'll see at a certain stage of the game, what will happen is that it will go to a double set of thumbnails. If you continue to do this long enough, it'll go to a triple set of thumbnails. So again, this is pretty portable as far as that part goes in here. However, this is also controlled by the stuff that's sitting up at the very top. So if you look at the very top of your browser window, there's a little eyeball up here at the top. If you click on that eyeball, you'll get this drop-down menu that's got 3 different icons in it. The first one is what we're dealing with right now, where you can get multiple thumbnails and multiple rows. If you click on the one in the middle, you get a list view. And again, you can hover over this. We're going to pull out a list view and show it to you in just a second. Nobody really uses list view like this, but they do use list view in a bigger context. We'll look at it in a second. But then the last icon over, if you click on the last icon over, what you now have is no matter how big you make this screen, you only get one set of thumbnails. This is how most people I know work. Most people I know actually want to work and have a single list of thumbnails that are on the side right here. Now again, this is going to be a note to you guys. You should be taking some notes with this lecture, not all of it, but some notes on this, and this is one of the things that you should know. One of the problems that you get into in editing with this is, let's say I want to go through my browser images right now. What I want you to do is I want you to actually make your screen, use this again, this part right here. I want you to do this so that you get exactly a 4 up on your screen. So you've got 4 thumbnails. If you're on these bigger computers, the ones that are at the school right here, it looks like you'll be okay to do this. On some giant monitors, you can actually take this up to 5. But the advantage of this is that I can actually come over here now. This is my scroll bar that's sitting over here for the browser. I can actually tap inside the scroll bar, and it will give me sets of 4 that are going down. So when I do that one click down, I know that I have never seen this image before or these 4. So it gives you a way to know that you're not getting an overlap as you go through this. Does that make sense, everybody, what I'm talking about? Again, these are great tricks that simply help you work through your images here. So a lot of times you're going to want to go through this, and if all of a sudden you've got a setting that looks like this, so I've got 3.5 images right here. When I click on this drop down, I've already seen the top half of this image, and this just gets to be confusing as shit. And now I've got the top half of this image, and then these 3 right here, and then I do this again, and I have no idea. Did I see this image up here already, or did I just skip past that? Or it's just a nightmare. You want to control on this. Make sense? Okay. Depending on what you're doing, there are times when you're going to want to edit, and you don't really necessarily, if you click on a thumbnail, it comes up under your viewer, and that's what this is right here, again, the viewer. But there are times when you actually don't want to bother to see the viewer. You're just doing maintenance on all of your files. To deal with that, you can come up to the View menu, down to Viewer, and uncheck this. And your viewer goes away, and these are only thumbnails now. This is when you can use that other drop-down menu. So again, these are the three little icons right here that were underneath the eyeball. You can click on List View right now, and this now actually gives you quite a bit more information in terms of what you're really looking at right here. Up at the very top, there's also a slider that goes from a minus to a plus. This is actually the zoom level of these thumbnails. So you can actually bump these up, and a lot of people will actually edit. This becomes more like a contact sheet right here. It gives you other information that you can use, blah, 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 blah. So some people will actually edit like this. I don't. Anyway, I'm going to go back to the thumbnail view on the right-hand side. I'm also going to add the viewer again. And this is how a digital tech would work. They would actually have this. Some digital techs will actually expand the toolbars to a double row. We'll take a look at that later on. I'm just going to throw this rest of this out to you. In most cases, that when I'm working in a professional studio, we have at least 3, if not 4 or 5 monitors going, looking at the exact same thing. In order to do that, it's a combination of what you do inside of Capture One, but it's also what you do in terms of your displays up on the side in the system software. But what it means is this: if you click on your window menu, go to your drop down and come down to Workspace, you can see right here where it says Dual Monitor Large Browser or Dual Monitor Large View. If you've got an art director that you simply want to have a big view of what you're shooting, you do this Dual Monitor Large Viewer. Then your screen as a tech looks like this. Their screen has nothing but this big image in the middle of it. They don't see any of this on the side. They don't see any thumbnails. All they see is this. Typically, if you have a stylist on set, again, I shoot fashion, so if you have a stylist on set, either a prop stylist or a food stylist or whatever it is, you'll have another monitor for them. To add a monitor, you cannot do that here in Capture One. To add a monitor, you would come over here to your Apple menu, down to System Preferences, and then inside of System Preferences for displays, you can add, I don't know how many you can add in the Macintosh world. I think it's, I don't know that there's a limit. You think you can just continue to add monitor after monitor after monitor. And in doing that, again, your stylist doesn't need to see all of this other shit. They just need to see a big version of this. So you would actually have their screen monitoring the screen that your art director is looking at, not monitoring, not mirroring your screen. Does this make sense to everyone? These strategies matter because you're going to be expected to go in and set this up. And if all of a sudden somebody says to you, okay, we have 6 monitors here and I want them all set up to actually preview this viewer, every single one of them, and I need that done in 5 minutes. Would everybody in this room be able to do that now? You're all lying. You've never done it. So the answer would be no. But after I spend some time practicing this on my own, yes. Correct? Okay, well, at least you would know where to begin, right? All right. A couple of other things that will happen in your viewer. I don't suggest doing this, but you can. So up to the view menu again. And again, I can't stress enough, please do these menu things with me. Do not just look at this shit. It's going to put you to sleep. Just do this with me. Come up to your view menu. Come down to the viewer part and into customize viewer. You can do multi-mode. This is actually what multi-mode means, is that if you hold down your command key, you can see multiple images at once. If you don't have that on, it also exists right here. It's these little icons right here. If you've got 2 images that are showing right here right now, you'll see that if you try to go back and forth between the 2, you can, but you can't get out of this. If we click on another image, the selection goes away. That's one way to get away from it. But if you don't want to actually select another image, what you do is you just hover right next to, see, I'm right on the outside of the thumbnail. click just outside of the thumbnail, and then you will have nothing selected. So it's just a way to get rid of what you've actually got selected. Up at the very top, if we go, instead of the icon that's got 4 little frames in it, if we go to one that's just got a single, and then click the other one off. Now if you click on an image, it'll show it to you. But if you hold down the Command key and click on the second one, it will select it. You'll see that there's a little border around it, but it does not show up in your viewer because you said you did not want that multi-version to actually show. So if we click on the multi-version again, now it actually will show, and I can click off this part right here. So that's basically what's going on in this part. Does this make sense to everyone? You also have options for your so one of the options that you have for your view, and again, I don't suggest doing this because I think this information down along the bottom is incredibly important. But if you click on the view and come down again to your viewer to customize here, you can say that you want to turn off labels, that you also want to turn off the viewer toolbar. You can do all of these kinds of things. I strongly suggest you do not do this. You could do this for an art director to make their stuff look a little bit cleaner because they don't need to know that you're shooting at ISO 100 at f8.5 and what your frame count is. They don't need to know all of that information. You do. You can do the same thing for the browser. If you look at the customize for your browser, you can do an auto hide. Let's just click on auto hide. You'll see what it does. So click on auto hide. The browser is now gone away, but if I hover over this edge, it pops back on. The problem that I have with this is that it does buy me more screen real estate. It makes my images larger, but when I do this, it actually covers one of my images, and I don't like that part here, so I don't actually use this behavior, but nonetheless, realize that it is there. Some people love it, so you can use it. I'm going to go back to my browser and uncheck auto hide. Again, we already talked about where you can place your browser here in terms of being below it or above it or all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's basically what's going on here. Okay, I'm going to show the browser again. So it's sitting over here on the side. So we've talked about what the little eyeball up at the very top is. Those are the 3 different views for the type of thumbnail. Again, for me, I always leave it on the one that's to the far right side. It's a single thumbnail only, and it will give it to me as big as I can get it if I drag this screen over. You'll see at a certain point as you start to continue to drag over, you're not going to get anything else going on in here. It doesn't get any bigger. So just keep that part in mind. I typically will do a 4-up thumbnail. That's the way I like mine. If you've got the screen real estate, 5-up is even better. So then up to the, what was that? Oh, so with this done, we've already talked about the eyeball here. Now we need to actually look at the up and down arrows that are right on the top of the browser window. If you click on this drop down, you will actually see this is your sorting order. So in the sorting order here, it is how do you want to sort the files that are in this browser window here? What do you want to sort them by? Now, if you've actually named your files correctly and done all of this, leaving it by name should be fine because it'll have all the same file name, and then just the frame count is the only thing that keeps going up. Sometimes this gets screwed up. How many of you guys all of a sudden find yourself shooting in the middle of your thumbnail stack, and you've got images that are on top of it and images that are after it? Has that happened to anyone in this class? Right. So if that happens to you, it'll drive you crazy. And until you get a chance to rename all your files in order, what you do is you come down and say, give this to me by date. If you do that, then it'll actually look at the date in the metadata of your images, and it will sort everything by the date that they were shot. So no matter what my frame count is, no matter how bad my naming is, if I've screwed all of this up, it doesn't pay any attention to any of the naming convention. It's only looking at stuff based on the date that it was shot. So this is the order that these were actually shot. So the images, the JPEGs that I've actually borrowed from other people were shot before I did this session outside, which was before I actually did this session, which is inside, which was before I actually got this one JPEG file right here. Does this make sense, everyone, what's going on? If you click the arrow again, what happens is, if you come down and you click on date again, it will reverse the order. So now what's happened is that I've got the dates in reverse. So now I'm going from newest to oldest as opposed to oldest to newest. If you click on that drop-down menu again, you will see that there's a little check mark next to reverse, and date has changed from a check mark to a little slash. So again, these are all how you can sort your camera. All of these things allow you to sort your camera. If you come down to rating, that is the star rating that exists. If you come down to color tag, those are the color tags that exist on this. So you can sort by ISO. If you know you've got two different cameras, you can sort by ISO if they're different. You can sort by all of this stuff right here. So if you come down to manual, this will allow you to do whatever order you want. So you can, for instance, click on, I'm going to go back to a single image right here. I'm going to click on this image right here and click, and I can drag it down underneath this image that's right next to it. So this is, I can change the order of my thumbnails in any way that I want to. That would be on manual. If this fucks up on you, and it will, go back to the drop-down menu and say, go ahead and give me this sort by name, and it'll actually go back to the way we had them originally. Are there questions about this? All right. Now would be a good time for a break. I've got, we'll call it, I'm going to be really generous with you guys. We'll call this 2:25, make it a hard 10, be back at 2:35, and we'll pick up where we left off. Shoot.
Why those models don't shave?
Why what?
Why those models don't shave?
Why they don't shave? Oh,
Even those models are like,
yeah. It happens.
hey, bro, I'm talking this money.
Okay, back into Capture One. So, all right, up at the very top, we're going to start at the top and kind of work our way through all of this. There is a set of tools that sit up here at the very top. So for instance, you have an import and an export button. You've got a capture button right here. What this will be is if you've got a tethered camera connected, you click on this, it'll actually do a capture for you. This is actually a reset button right here. There's an undo and a redo button right here. There's an auto adjust button that I don't know anybody who ever uses this. Then there's a standard set of tools that sit up in here. There's then a before and after, a grid, and exposure warning. Some of these may be custom for me. You may not have all of these, but nonetheless, this whole thing is editable. So to edit this thing, I want you to hover over the toolbar that's up at the very top. Again, this is another right click. So if you're on a Macintosh, hold down the control key and click. Or if you've got a right button mouse, click on the right button mouse. If you're on a trackpad on a Mac, it's a 2-finger swipe down on the trackpad. But for me, I always do control click and I'll get a drop down menu. And you can see right here, it says either icon and text, icon only, or customize toolbar. If you click on customize toolbar, it will actually open up, and all of these tools are available for you to actually use in this screen up in here. You'll also notice that there's spacers that have been put into this screen up here to make navigation across this easier. So all of these tools you can add and you can move them around. So for instance, if you're import export you want over here, you can simply move the stuff over here. All of this stuff can get actually moved around. The things that typically are not up here by default are things like rotate or orientation. So it's this, it would be this double set of guys right here. If you click on this and simply drag it up on top of your screen and let go, you now have buttons that will allow you to rotate your images clockwise or counterclockwise. You also, if you're a person, architectural photographer, and you always use a grid, you can actually, my grid's already up here though, so you don't need to add that. There's all sorts of other stuff that you can actually have that you can bring up into here to actually do it. If you want to go back to the original, it's this thing right here. You grab this whole thing at the very bottom and drag this up on top, and it will reset this to your default. I'm going to leave mine down here like this. Again, I'm going to hit done on this. It's interesting, they finally actually made this, so this now actually does have text underneath it. It used to be, literally until the version like last year, there was never any text underneath these, so you simply had to guess at what these things actually were. But again, if you control click on this drop down menu, you could say, well, I already know what they all are, and I hate the text that's underneath it. You can click on icon only, and all of those things will actually go away. You'll have a sort of a cleaner interface. But I'm going to leave this as icon and text for the time being right now. So it's a way to actually change what's going on up in here. You'll also notice that at the very top of here, because we've actually added a tool, tools that were on the right-hand side have now been hidden. That's what these two little arrows are right here. If you click on these two little arrows, it'll actually show you what this is on the side of this. So this was actually copying and applying settings that are sitting over here. So we'll look at what the rest of these are a little bit later on. So I'm going to undo that part right here. If we wanted to buy a little more screen real estate right here, I can hold down the control key, click and say customize toolbar. And you can see there's a spacer that's right between these two. I can grab the spacer and pull it out. I can grab this spacer and also pull it out, as well as this one and pull it out. And now when I say done, I actually have my copy and apply auto settings are now visible to me again. There's another big space that exists right in here. So you can actually get quite a bit of tools up here at the very top. Once you get your tools up at the top and you are liking the way your setup is, you can actually save your workspace. And some people will do different workspaces for different tasks. This works in pretty much all graphics programs right now. You can do this in Lightroom, you can do this in Photoshop, you can do this here in Capture One. If you like the way this space works, you can come up to your window menu, come down to workspace and do save workspace, and they would name it something that makes sense to you. You'll see I've got two custom ones that are right here. One of them is my setup for only shooting tethered capture. I get rid of all the processing tools. I don't have any of those showing here because all I'm doing is shooting tethered here. So you can add as many of those custom workspaces as you actually want. And it will remember everything. It will remember the tool tabs that you've got as well as the tools. It will remember the size of your browsers, where the settings are, how big you like your zoom, everything else that's actually in here will actually get saved into that workspace. Are we good on this part? Okay, custom workspaces matter quite a bit. Okay. In the toolbar that exists up here, and the tools that come across here for us to work on, the library starts here by default. This again is the default workspace. You can change how all of these are. So I'm going to not change this one right here. I'm going to start on the other side over here. So this I, which stands for metadata, if you hover over the I and hold down your control key, again, it's a right click again, so control key or double swipe on a trackpad or right key if you're on a Windows, and you click, you'll get a drop down menu here. And in this drop down menu, you can say, I want to add a tool to this screen. So these are tabs, and you can see there's a bunch of information underneath this. This is my metadata tab. So I have metadata, I have keywording, I have a keyword library, I have annotations here. All of this is metadata. However, I can add any tool to this that I want. So holding down the control key and clicking, I can add a tool. All of these tools are available to me, even if I've got these tools someplace else. So for instance, I've got my camera settings somewhere. It's in the camera bar right here, but I can add it to this one as well. So for instance, let's just do this. We're going to do, what we'll do is a focus setting on this one. So come over to, again, right click. So let me start it back in the beginning. I'm on my metadata tab. Control click on this, say I want to add a tool, and come down and add focus. And you'll see it puts a focus tool right in here. If we click and drag this down, you'll see that it'll actually show you the focus of this. You can then click on the focus screen if you want to. So I'm going to click on the sort of the area right above between where it says focus and the little three dots that are on the side. I can click and drag this thing out. So I can pull my focus out. I can have multiple screens right here. I can then click this lower end and drop this open. If I had enough screen real estate, this would actually be good. I could actually be monitoring my focus the whole time right here while watching the capture part happen here as well. Does this make sense what's going on here? To get rid of this screen right here, if you click on the little 3 dots that fly out here, you can say Remove Tool. It simply gets rid of the focus version that was in this tool tab. It does not get rid of the focus version that's actually in my, typically I have this sitting over in here, but since I went to my default screen, I don't have my focus in my camera setting anymore. But nonetheless, you can actually change, you can actually get rid of your tool tabs as well. So if I hover over, again, I'm going to hover over metadata again. I'm going to click my drop down menu and I'm going to say tool tab. I want to remove a tool tab. These are the ones that are showing right here: the library, capture, lens, color, exposure, details, adjustments, and metadata. If I say I want to remove metadata and click it'll say, do you want to remove that? And I'm going to say yes. Metadata is now gone. If I want to get it back, I can simply hold down, right click into this area and say add tool tab, and I can bring my metadata tool tab back and it will actually show up here. If I don't like the order that I've got here, a lot of people prefer to have their metadata. Metadata is a part of the whole capture process. So a lot of people prefer to actually have their processing tools on the right side and their capture tools on the left side. So library would be on the left side, camera would be on the left side. This is actually this is lens correction here. This again would also be capture, but this is color. Color is processing. This is exposure. Exposure is processing. So if I want to say I want my metadata, my keywording to actually be right next to my camera, click on the keywording. In this case, you hold down the Option key, I take that back, the Command key, and click, and you can then move this over and you can change the order. So I can put my metadata over next to my camera icon and I'm off to the races. Again, if you get this all tricked out and you love what you've got, come up to your window menu, come down and do Save as Workspace, and save it and call it your own personal workspace. So this would be, in my case, Verser's Workspace, if that's where I wanted this part to actually be. Then to actually find, so I would go ahead and type all of that out. To find those workspaces, I'm going on memory here, so hopefully this is going to work. You come out to your Finder. So in the Macintosh world, the library for users is hidden by default. So you don't see it anywhere. Apple hides it. For us to be able to find it, you need to do this. This doesn't happen in the Windows world. Come up to your Go menu right here, click on the Go menu, and you'll get this drop-down menu. And if you take a look through these folders that are sitting right in here, you do not see library. However, if you hold down either the Shift key or the Option key, library will show up. When library shows up, you actually want to click on it. This again is the hidden user library. This is where all the stuff that matters to you is kept. If you then come up to your top of your window menu and you hover over the word library, you will get this little folder icon. If you click on this little folder icon, you can drag that folder over to your favorites on the left-hand side and let go, and then library will be here forevermore, and you don't have to remember that go, hold down the Option key trick. You will simply go to your library right here. When you get to your library, go to Application Support. Under Application Support, you come down to Capture One. In Capture One, you would come down to Workspaces, and in Workspaces, you would grab your custom workspace that you just made. You would drag this to your external hard drive so that you always have a copy of it. And then any computer that you ever go on, evermore, all you need to do is navigate to this folder, drag this file into it, and all of your workspace is brought with it. So all the settings that you did, your custom toolbar, your custom tool settings, the order that your tool tabs are in, everything is brought in here. So this is a really smart thing to do. Back into Capture One. So up here in the top, again, I'm going to go back to my library to begin with. Let's not go back to library. We're actually going to do another one here entirely. Come to the very top of your tool tab, and to the where all the tool tabs are. I'm going to right click to the side of this, so holding down the control key, click, and I'm going to say add tool tab. Please do this with me, and we're going to come down and we are going to add a custom tool tab. So again, up to drop down menu, control click, add tool tab, custom tool tab. This thing will open up, and I'm going to call this Verser. This is going to be my private tool tab. You can name yours after yourself. In the drop-down menu for your icon, I think I'm number 1, so I'm going to leave this number 1. But if you're a lover, not a fighter, you would actually pick the heart. If you're a fighter, you can pick the hammer. If you're moonstruck, pick the moon. If you're starstruck, pick the star. If you're sunstruck, pick the sun. You can pick whatever one of these you want. I'm going to leave mine on my number 1 right here, and I'm going to simply say add this as a tab. Up at the very top now, you'll see it sits right here. This is the tool tab in my little drop-down menu. It's called Verser, and now I can populate this to be a custom tab for me. So I'm going to hold down the control key, right-click on this, and say, I want to add a tool, and the first tool I'm going to add is black and white. How many of you guys know that there is a tool tab for black and white in Camera Raw? In Capture One. Right? So now all of a sudden you've got an art director who says, well, yeah, the blue girl is really kind of cool, looks Stephen Kleinish like, whatever, but we're shooting black and white here. I want to see this in black and white. You simply click on Enable Black and White, and your images are now black and white. This isn't the only thing you want. You're actually into making really weird looking shit for, I don't know, some photographer who's shooting art, not commercial. Underneath this, or actually I'm going to come right back up to the top here, hold down the control key, click and get another drop down menu, and I'm going to say add another tool. And in this case, I'm going to add focus, because I want to be able to check my focus to see if this is actually an image that's worth processing. If you click on the little magnifying glass at the bottom of your focus, then you can simply click on any part of your image and it will populate this, so I know that this is in focus now. And then finally, I'm going to add one more tool up to the tool tab again, hold down the control key, click on my drop down menu, and I'm going to say I want to add another tool here, and I'm actually going to add exposure, because I want to really blow this out, and this is my art. Just call me Lillian Bassman. Does this make sense what we've got going on here? Right? So all of this is customizable for you guys. Now in this case, I'm going to get rid of this tool tab. I'm not going to keep this one, so I'm going to go back up to tool tab, hold down the control key, click on my drop down menu, and remember, we're not removing tools, we're actually removing the tool tab. And right down here is the custom one I made called Verser. And so we can get rid of this guy. It's going to say, do you want to get rid of all these? And I'm going to say, yes, I do. So what I want to show you right now is a really, if you've got the screen real estate, it's how a lot of digital text actually will work, will do this kind of work. So if I come over to my library right here, I can click the entire tool tab and pull it off. So hang on one second. They've changed a lot in this version of Capture One. I will get to that later when we actually get more to layout in here, so I'm not going to worry about that part right now. So anyway, over in my camera tool tab, certain things that I do like. How many of you guys use exposure valuation? Why? Yeah, but then you believe this histogram, don't you? Well, so if I actually had an image that was on pure white, like this image right here, this is giving me a warning that all of this is overexposed. Is this image overexposed? No, it's just dominated by white that sits on the outside here. So there is some information in here, but most of it is worthless. If you're working with a color card, you don't actually need this. So for me, this is just wasted real estate. So I would come in here again. This is me. You don't need to do this. You can do this because you can always go back and just reset this to your defaults after we fuck this whole thing up, and you will be good to go. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to get rid of this tool. So I'm holding down my control key, clicking on my drop-down menu, and I'm going to say I want to remove exposure evaluation, and it's now gone. I also, camera focus only works with phase 1 cameras. I don't have a phase 1 camera. Why on earth would I keep this? So control, click, say remove tool, and I'm going to remove camera focus on this. I've now got camera settings that I actually do want. I do want to keep camera naming in here, location, all of this part I want to, adjustment parts I want to. Do I want to keep overlay in here? Do I want to keep Capture Pilot in here? So Capture Pilot allows you to actually see this stuff on your iPhone or on a tablet. I don't use this, so I can actually come to the little 3 dots, click on this and say remove tool, and it'll actually remove it at that level instead of doing it up here at the tool tab. Again, Capture One Live Beta. I don't want to be a beta tester for Capture One. Click on the little 3 tools and say remove this tool. Down here, overlay, I actually do use. So this is now more what I'm actually accustomed to using in my capture setting. The 2 things that I would add to this, which I'm going to add to this right now, is I'm going to come up to my camera, control click. I'm going to add focus because that matters to me. I do want to see focus. And then I'm going to come right back to the same thing, click and add my drop down menu here. And the tool that I'm going to add now is going to be no, sorry. Where are you? Hang on 1 second. I don't remember what it's called. High dynamic range. That was it. All right, so I'm going to click on tool, add tool, and I'm going to add high dynamic range. What this is actually gives you, it's usually drops up here in the very top. This is highlight recovery right here. So if we take a look at an image like this that's really blown out, I can actually take my highlight recovery here. It's just a nice thing to have on hand to say, oh yeah, even though it looks like you blew that background out, there is detail back there and I actually can recover it. So it's just something that I want to keep handy for me when I'm actually shooting. Is this making sense, everybody, what's going on here? Okay, one of the things that we did not do, because I got sidetracked, when we first set this up, what mistake do you see sitting on this tool tab right now? Something that I should have set up at the very beginning that I didn't. Paige. Is it the what? Yes, that's exactly what it is. It is the naming part of this. Anytime here. So in the naming part, we should have done this the very second we made a new session. So we went through the new session. Immediately you should come to the camera tab, and down here for next capture naming, you want to click on where it says format. You'll see it does name by default and then capture camera counter. You want to click on this camera counter right here, and we're going to change this. The camera counter itself is your shutter count. It's not a reliable thing to give you a frame name. So you want to get rid of this. Again, these are called tokens. You can see it's name tokens right here. You're going to get rid of this token simply by hitting the delete key. It'll get rid of it. You can type directly into this. So you're going to add an underscore in top of next to that. Then you're going to grab this 1-digit counter token, and you're going to click and pull this up into the top. And then click on the drop-down menu here and say, I want a 3-digit counter. This is your frame counter right here. So you can see down in here we've got our name of our session, and then I'm going to start at frame 001, and then again it gives you this IIQ, which is just telling you that it's going to add the extension. That's not something you actually add using tokens. Does this make sense, everybody, what we just did? And I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. Alrighty then. Hang on 1 second. I'm just going through my notes here, guys, really quickly, because we've gotten through most of what I'm looking at for here really quickly. That. Okay, while we're here, just because I've got my notes set up here right quickly, I'm going to click over here onto my library again. I'm going to go to the very top of my thumbnails. I'm going to select the one at the very top. Actually, the image that's sitting underneath this, all those changes are still made to this. If I want to reset this at its default, that's what this reset button is right here. So I've selected this frame. Remember, I made it black and white and then also blew it out. Click on reset. This will bring it back to so that it has no corrections on this at all. It hasn't been color balanced. We'll talk about color balancing it later on, but nonetheless, I'm going to throw this thing away. So I'm just going to hit the delete key and it's actually gone. But where it goes matters. So if you actually take a look at your session structure over here, there is a trash folder over here. If you click on the trash folder over here, you can see that your images are sitting right here. Getting rid of these images is a two-step process. So once it goes into the trash folder right here, to permanently get rid of it, you would click on this guy again and then say hit Command Delete to actually trash this thing. Or you could actually hover over the trash folder, hold down your Control key, click, and say show this to me in the Finder. Again, for those of you who are just sitting here watching this, you're never going to learn this shit. Anyway, it's sitting right here, and then you would come in here and throw this away in the Finder. The reason I bring this up is that unless you throw this stuff away in the Finder, it stays with your session the whole time. Why would that possibly matter, you ask? So I've got a shooting for Bon-Ton, Carson Pirie Scott. You would know those guys here is that. I've got a shooting for Carson Pirie Scott, and it's a lingerie with a bedroom scene. And we're shooting for at least a week, if not 10 days on this, right? So it's day 3 or day 4. We're in the studio shooting. It gets to be 5 o'clock, and we all decide, okay, we're going to leave. My assistant, the stylist assistant, the hair and makeup artist, and one of the models decides they're going to go out and get a bunch of beer and come back to the studio and party. So they do. They come back to the party, and they get kind of drunk. And it's like 9 or 10 o'clock at night now, and they're like, let's make some pictures on the set. And there's like, okay. So my assistant gets all dressed up in women's lingerie, and they're shooting all these pictures, and they're doing all this shit on the bed, and they're having the time of their lives, right? It's great. And then they get through all of this, and they're laughing hysterically, and look at how funny the pictures are, whatever. And then they throw them all away, thinking, okay, those are all gone. So we come back into the studio the next morning. Everybody's a little hungover who was at the party. But anyway, we come back in the studio. And I threw a picture, somebody threw a picture. We were doing light checks. And I don't know, somebody threw a picture away. And the art director said, oh, let me see that again. I want to see, I love the way the flower was away. Anyway, so we go to the trash folder and open up the trash folder. And guess what's sitting in the trash folder? All the pictures of the photo assistant and the stylist assistant half naked on the bed, drunk. Yeah. So I bring this up because if you send a session to an art director, creative director, something like that, photographer, whatever, you're sending the trash along with it. And so all the stuff that you wanted to throw away has not been thrown away. It's in that trash folder. And unless you go in and specifically throw it away, good luck. Oh, no. It was hysterical. I laughed. Not that kind of boss. Okay, hang on one second here. Two-step process, we've gone through that. Yep. So what? Okay, now you want the file back. That's a great question. So the way you get it back is that you can click on your trash folder and the thumbnail will show up, and then simply click on the thumbnail and drag it back onto your capture folder and let go. Now we don't see anything. Why don't I see anything? Why aren't all my folders, where are all my thumbnails? You got to click on the capture folder to show it. This is one of the things that trips people up the most in working with Capture One. If you've got any other folder selected anywhere, you don't see these, you would think that, well, the captures are always going to show here. This is just showing you the thumbnails of whatever you've picked. So you need to select the capture folder for everybody to show up. Okay, hang on one second. Okay, this is where the gloves come off. Okay, as we take a look down through this, so we've talked about what the capture folder is, and we've talked about what the trash folder is. What the output folder is that if you actually do any processing, these are all still raw files, so none of these have been processed. So again, processing would be color correction, and then you would say, I want a JPEG, I want a TIFF, I want a Photoshop file. We'll get into processing much later on. But those files, once you process them, would go to this output folder. And then there's this thing called selects folder. And selects folder is very specific. What happens with selects folder is that it'll actually take an image outside of your capture folder and put it into a separate folder. So this happens on a Finder level. So to see what I mean, grab the top file, the top thumbnail, drag this to your selects folder, hover over it, and let go. And you will see it's no longer in your capture folder, but it has been physically moved. If you hover over your selects folder right now, hold down your control key, do a right click and say show me this in the Finder, you will actually see that the file has been physically moved out of capture into selects. So the reason this happens is there's a lot of people when they edit that they throw away everything except for their top pick. This is how they do it. They actually would, instead of going through, rating, do everything else, whatever, they simply pick a select that they like, they move it into the select folder, and then they completely erase their capture folder. I think that's a very dangerous way to work, but just so that you understand that that's what's going on here. If I go back into my selects folder in Capture One, grab the thumbnail and drag it on top of my capture folder again, it will put it back into the capture folder again. If I click on this, show me in the Finder, control click, say show this to me in the Finder, you'll actually see that it is blank. It's got a Capture One folder in here, which has actually got the XMP data from the file that I put in there. You can get rid of that, it doesn't matter. Back up to my capture folder and we are good to go. Okay, so session albums. The next part that we need to get in here is that there needs to be a way that you can actually call your stuff so that you can tag stuff, so that you can rate stuff, so that you can go through all of that kind of stuff. What you will see is by default there's two sets of possible session albums that you can have here. There's 5-star and all images. And the reason we have all images here is that you can have subfolders inside a capture session. And there's no way to see all of the files that are in different subfolders other than using this all images right here. So we don't have subfolders in here yet, but we're going to go there in just a second. But if you click on this thing that says 5 stars, it'll show you only the 5-star images that are sitting right over here. And you can see, in our case, you should have the same thing. There's like 4 or 5 of them that are actually in here. If you take a look at your search ratings down under filters, it'll also show you the number of 5-star images that you've actually got. So this would be 5-star images. If you click on all images, again, if we have a subfolder in here, right now it's only showing us our capture folder, but, oh, I take that back. It's actually showing us something else in here. I don't know where those came in from. But nonetheless, that's what's going on in here. So you can add to these. So you could actually click on this plus next to session album. You'll get a flyout menu and you have 2 options here. The first is a regular album. And if we do a regular album, I'm just going to call this, what are we going to call this? We'll call this my maybe folder. And say OK to this. And you'll see it shows up, it actually shows up as Mabler. Again, to change the spelling of this, you right click on this and say rename, and again this would now be maybe, M-A-Y-B-E. In using your maybe folder, again, this is not a smart album, this is just a regular dumb album. You could pick your images, and so I'm going to pick these two thumbnails and I'm going to drag them to my maybe folder. Sorry, auto scroll, my worst enemy. Into my maybe folder. And you can see that it didn't move them out of my capture folder. They're both still sitting here. But now if you click on look at your maybe folder, there are two references to here. So it did not make a second copy of these images. There's only one raw file here. It just made another reference to the image. So anything that I do into this image, like right here, like this right now, so for instance, I will try to change the color of this one right now by clicking on my white balance tool. Again, you can do the same thing with me. And I'm going to click on her white shirt, which sort of basically color corrects this guy. Now when I go back up to my capture folder, it is color corrected in my capture folder as well. These things, I didn't get rid of these things. I simply actually made a second reference to it right here. Does that make sense to everybody what's going on? We good on this part? Okay. I'm going to then delete my maybe folder right here. So I'm going to come up to the top right here. I'm selecting this guy. I'm going to click on the minus part, and it doesn't look like it wants to allow me to get rid of this, probably because there's something in here. So I'm going to get rid of both of these by dragging them back into my capture folder or deleting them. Exactly. It's just making a reference to it. So yes, you should probably know this from like most music apps do the same thing. It allows you to build playlists. It doesn't make copies of your music. It just is a reference to it. That's what's going on in here. Yes? So I can delete the entire album, but it won't delete those files. It just deletes the reference to them. Here, I'll show you. I'm going to put them back in again right here. So it was these two files. I'm going to put these back into my maybe folder. Again, this is now just a reference to those two. They're still sitting in my capture folder. If I hover over my maybe folder, control click and say delete this album. So you sure you want to delete it? I'm going to say sure, but then when I go back to my capture folder, those files are still here. Again, that was just a reference to it. It's a way to just build collections. It's like a playlist. That's all it is. Make sense? You can do a second version of this, and it's this again, this drop-down plus. So if you could do this with me, that would be great. Click on this plus album. We're going to do a smart album right now. And what a smart album does is that it actually looks at conditions of your capture folder, and if the conditions are met, it will again make a reference, like a playlist, to this. It won't move your stuff out of your capture folder, but that's what it'll ultimately do. When you open this up, there are a set of presets that exist in here because this is where most people start. So most people will actually start with a preset that says, okay, I want to build an album that is all of my 4-star or higher images. So 4-star or higher here would be all of my 4 stars and all of my 5 stars. So I can click on this 4-star or higher, and that as the first condition that I've actually put in here. Then we can add another condition. You can add as many conditions as you want. So I'm going to click on this plus to get another condition in here. And in this case, I can click on this drop-down menu, and I'm going to say that the color tag is green. So now what this album will give me is any 4-star or 5-star image, because again, this is 4-star or greater, and it's got a green color tag. I'm going to click on the name up at the very top, and I'm going to call this 4-star plus green. So that's the name of it right here. I'm going to go ahead and say OK to this. And then we can take a look at this album right here. There is only one image that I had that met that criteria. It's the picture of me, because I'm a 5-star kind of guy and good to go. Does this make sense what's going on in here? Okay, I'm going to delete this one again. Control-click to delete the album. Then we're going to come down to session favorites. So guys, from this stage on, this starts getting into the pro level of what you're really going to be expected to do in this. So this next part's going to get a little tricky. Not tricky, it's just involved. We're going to go through all of this part, and then we will take another break and then move on, because I realize that this is a lot. But this one, it's really important that you pay attention to this. This, in theory, should not be called session favorites. This should actually be called session subfolders, and it's the worst thing about Capture One. These favorites, this has nothing to do with favorites. This has everything to do with how you categorize your subfolders in a shooting. So when I do a photo shooting, typically, again, I shoot fashion and beauty. My typical day is I go in, there's going to be 15 outfits that I actually shoot in a given day. And I want to keep those separate. I want them all under one session. It is this session, but I want a separate folder for every single session that I've actually am going to shoot to, so that it keeps some order. How many of you guys have gone into the studio and done 1,000 frames and it's just frame number 1 to frame number 1,000? What a nightmare. Who wants to actually try to sort and order that or edit that? It's horrible. So there's 2 ways of building these subfolders, and I'm going to show you, and I'm going to tell you the ones that I think are the best way to do it. So please do this with me. In your session favorites, come over and click on the plus button, and it should open up a dialog. And in the dialog, it's actually going to say, okay, where do you want to put this thing? And what we need to do is we need to navigate to our session. So it is this session right here. You need to navigate to your pictures folder, and then we need to come here to this again, the naming convention, the one we made. Again, version 2 is the one that we're working with. Click on this version 2, come into your capture folder right here. This is where all of your captures are. And once we're inside of this, you click on new folder, and I'm going to just put in 01 and then say create, and then click add. Now I'm going to make a second one right now. You'll see it. Put down this one right here called 01. I'm going to do a second one right now. Click on the plus again. In this case, it's actually picked 01. We do not want to put our new subfolder inside this subfolder. We want to click and come back out to the capture folder. And then again, I'm going to do new folder, and I'm going to call it 02 and say create, and then click on add. And now if we go up to my capture folder up at the very top, make it active, hold down the control key, do a right click, and come down and say, show me this in the Finder. What you will see that happens in this Finder is I've got 2 folders in here that are called 01 and 02. Now, that's the long way to do the edit. So the short way of doing the edit, again, please do this with me, is I'm going to hover over this, I'm going to work in this space that's actually in here right now. I'm going to hold down the Shift, Command, and hit N to create a brand new folder in here. And my brand new folder in here, I have no idea where that went. Should be called, it was right down here at the bottom, Untitled. This one's going to be called Untitled number 2. I'm going to type in 03. I'm going to go back to my Untitled one, hit the return key, which will select the name, and I'm going to call it 04. Then I'm going to come back up. Again, You don't want to, if you've still got 04 selected and we do new folder. So again, I'm just using the command shortcut here. You can come up and do new folder and it'll put it, but it nests it inside of here. So even though this is going to be 05, I would not leave it in here. I would drag it down here. This is where all my subfolders want to be. Then again, I'm going to do new folder and call it 06. And this would be what you would do at the very beginning of your day. New folder, 07. So now I've got a number of other subfolders that are made. I want to add them to my session favorites. I've already got 01 and 02 in here. I'm going to click on 03, hold down my shift key and click on 07 and simply drag these guys over to my session favorites and let go. And it will put them all here. It did not put them in order, so you can click on this and drag it up to the top, and then click on 2 and drag it up to the top. These are now my subfolders. So now when I go to shoot, and this matters guys, when I go to shoot now, I hover over 01, I hold down my control key, I click and I say, set this as my capture folder. Now the parent folder, this thing up here, is no longer what I'm shooting to. I'm shooting to this subfolder right in here. Does this make sense? Then once I've finished my shot number 1, I would come to my shot number 2, hold down my control key, click and say, I want you to set this as my capture folder, and now I'm shooting into 02. If you hold down your control key, right click and say, show me this in the Finder, this is where it's going. It's inside your capture folder, but it is inside of these subfolders right here. Does this make sense? Now it's time to gild the lily. If you come back over to your session 1 right here, come back over into our library, click on the camera folder right here. In your next camera naming convention, we're going to rename these again. Click on this drop-down menu, or the edit menu here, so right across from format, we're going to click on those little 3 dots. You're going to get rid of the 3-digit counter, and instead now in the tabs that you can, or the tokens that you can use, come down here and you want to select destination folder name. Drag that up here, put in an underscore, go up to the top and grab your 3-digit counter, put it in, click on your drop-down menu and say 3-digit counter. And now look at your naming convention. It is the name of your session. That 02 is the subfolder that you put it in, and the 001 is your frame. And go ahead and say OK to that. That same thing will show up right here in the sample naming right here. Look what happens now, because you see it's got an 02 in there, right? If I go back to my library and say I want my 01 to be my capture session, control click, say set as capture folder. Now I'm going to go look at my naming convention, and you will see that 01 now is the subfolder that's been named. If I go back to my library, hold down my control key, click on 07 and say I want this as my capture folder, then go back into camera, you will see in the naming convention 07 is now. So this is an automatic renaming thing that you don't need to screw with this at all. Every pro photographer I know uses this naming convention and this kind of setup. And you go in and you set this up right out from the get-go, and people go, oh my God, they really know what they're doing. I'm bringing them back next day. Yes. Hang on one second. Party in the studio. Sure, so you could do this with Outfit. You can actually do subfolders inside of your session so that you can split it among each photographer. You can actually name your subfolder with your name as opposed to somebody else's name. You don't need to use 01 or 2. It'll do anything. You can name it anything. I just do 01 and 2 because it keeps it short. If you do SHA-01, it's redundant. Again, why do you need a number of SHA? If you understand your naming convention, you don't. Are there questions about any of this?
The name couldn't be too long.
So again, the thing that you worry about names being too long, that's why we basically keep this naming convention the way it's set up right now. And the fact that we've got a keyword that's actually restricted in its length, because you don't want your naming convention to go beyond 32 characters, and that includes the 3-digit extension on the end of it. And the reason that is that there are a lot of Unix servers that exist in the world that will not accept files that have character names that are more than 32 characters. There's a limit. This has actually bit me in the ass before. I had a client, we were uploading to a server, and we were uploading a week's worth of shooting so that the creative director could look at the material over the weekend, and not a single file was uploaded because they were all rejected because it ended up being my digital tech had put extra period into the naming convention, and it pushed the character count of the name to 33, which is fine on a computer. Computers having a problem with this, but the server had a problem with it, and not a single file was uploaded, so there was nothing for the creator to look at, and I lost that client. Yeah, real world ramifications. Okay, questions about any of this? Are we good? All right, it's 3:25. Let's take another hard 10 and be back at 3:35, and we'll keep banging this out. Yeah. Hang on one second. Let me just pause this really quick. Okay. Any question at all about these session favorites that really should be called session subfolders? Okay, so I want to show you something right here. So I went ahead and I did my control click and I made this subfolder for my capture folder part right here. But I want to actually make the capture folder, the original, the parent, the folder that these are all sitting in, I want to make that my capture folder again. But the problem is that if I come up here and say, show me this capture folder, so I'm going to do this, control click and say, show this to me in the Finder. Again, it's going to pick 07. It's not going to pick this capture folder right here. So I need to get at this a different way, because again, I can't control click on this. That's meaningless. This is actually, you can't, this will never be the set as capture folder because it's always the capture folder. Again, this alias is pointing to 07. That's all that's going on here. So if I say make this the capture folder, it already is the capture folder and always will, because this thing is actually pointing to this, to whatever I've designated as being the capture folder. So if you wanted to get back to be the parent again, come down to your session favorites, hover over whichever one you've got set to be the capture folder right now, control click or right click and say, show me this file or this folder in the library. Again, the library is here inside the library. It's in this breakdown of all of your capture folders right here. And you can see it finds that file or that folder and says, okay, here, this is the capture folder. Then you can select the capture folder that is the parent of this, hold down your control key and click and say, set this is my capture folder, and you'll get the little icon there. And now when you come up to the top and say, show me this one in the Finder, you'll see that it's actually picked the correct parent. I keep going through this because a lot of people feel like that this designation right here is always going to be this folder, and it isn't. This folder points to whatever you tell Capture One you want to be the capture folder. So to take this a step further, there are people who will actually shoot, who will always output their process files to one folder on their computer, on their hard drive. So no matter what session you're in, no matter where you're coming from, anything that you process to be printed always goes to one folder. That happens by setting your output folder right here. So let's say, for instance, I want to do that. So I'm going to go out to my Finder. I'm going to go to, I have a partition in here called TOS. I'm going to simply put this on my TOS folder so that I can throw it away. I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this Output for Printing. And say OK to that. It didn't name it. Okay, so this is where I want everything, no matter what session I'm in Capture One for the rest of my life, I want to actually go out to this guy right here. So if we again come into Capture One, we need to find this thing. It's in my TOS folder right now, but if you take a look down here at the bottom underneath all of this, where it says System Folders, this is the entire hierarchy of your hard drive on your internal, on your laptop. So I'm going to come through this, and I am going to go to Verser because all of this is located in my user folder. And I'm going to scroll down in here, and I should have my TOS folder should exist in here. If I keep going through all of this, those are all my pictures. Keep going down. Oh, it's right here, sorry. It's in this volume right here. This is my TOS folder. I'm going to drop this open, and I'm going to come down where it says Output for Printing, and I'm going to control click on this and say I want you to set this is my output folder. And now everything that I output will go to that folder. So if I say show me this output in the Finder, this is where it's going to be. And you can see it's not Output for Printing. So again, this output folder thing right here is no longer this output right here. You can see this output no longer has that little icon next to it. So again, if I want this to change it back, I'm going to control click on this and say set this as my output folder, and then I'm good to go. Are there questions about any of this stuff? Because this can get confusing. These things only point at what you tell it you want these to be. This is not necessarily the capture folder that is inside the session that we made. All right. I don't know if this behavior still happens, but let's find out. If we hover over in your session favorites, let's just do number one, because I think you guys all made a number one. I'm going to hold down my control key, and I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to call it Shot 01, just to see what happens. And say OK to that. And then I'm going to control click to say show me this in the Finder. And you can see it's actually renamed it in the Finder as well. So whatever you're putting up here, renaming actually will rename it out here, so you can see it's been renamed Shot number one. If I change it out here, it'll be interesting to see if it changes it in Capture One. It actually used to. I don't know if it will. So I'm going to change the name out in the Finder and come back into here and Capture One, and yes indeed, it's still connected, so it's actually changed this. So good job, Capture One. They used to have it right, then they lost it and they broke it, and then they made it right again. No, this is just the folders that are containing it. Okay, so we have talked about what happens if you so in thinking about renaming stuff, what would you guys do if you realized that your session naming was incorrect? So let's say it was the wrong date. Let's say I put in here 20200422 and 21, and it really should have been 22. How would you fix this? So I will tell you this. If you come out here into your Finder and you look at this preference file right here, the one that is holding that name, and you rename this, you will break the entire session. At this stage of the game, your captures will still be there, but at this stage of the game, renaming it, Capture One will not know what to do with it. It might open it, it might not open it, whatever. So this is a bad idea to try to rename it here. You can't rename it in Capture One. So, but it's got the wrong name, and it's your job as a digital tech to get the correct name. How do you fix this? Batch rename will rename the captures, but not the session. I'm talking about this is the wrong name. A photographer looks at this and you've named it, because again, it's the shooting date, and it says, okay, this is on April 21st, 2020, but it was April 22nd. It's not April 21st. Fix that. How do you fix it? Say what? That's exactly how you do it. It's exactly the move we made in the very beginning. You would come up to here, you would click on this drop-down menu. Everybody do this with me. New session. And the new session that we're going to make is going to be called 202000422, which is the correct name, underscore CCC underscore C1 Pro Demo V2 into your pictures folder, which is where this is going to go. Look at this. This is not trying to put this in my pictures folder. This is actually trying to put it in the old folder. So click on this flyout menu for where it's going to be located. You do not want to put this in some nested folder in here someplace. We're simply going to put it in our pictures folder and say choose. Again, you would not open this in a new window. You would simply say okay to this. So I want everybody to do this with me because this is going to lead into our next part. So now if I go into my pictures folder, again, I'm going to do my setup. For my top version up here, I've got all of my captures in the one that's labeled wrong, the wrong session. So I'm going to click on my drop down here to actually get it to set there. And this is going to be my next one, my destination. So again, you're always copying from top to bottom. So these are the captures, these are the raw files that are in the incorrectly named session. Then I'm going to go to the correctly named session that's underneath it, which is right here. Again, the one that is got the 22, the correct session. Click on my capture folder, and then here, Command A to select them all, and drag this down into here, and let go. And this is now where I have all of my, so now I've got the correct name for my session. And if I click on my capture folder, this has also got all the correct files that are in here. Why couldn't you do what? You can. You just need to do it always the same. Habit. No, the thing is that if you do something the same way every single time, the chances that you're going to fuck it up are slim. If you are half of your time you're dragging from the bottom up to the top, and then the other half of the time you're dragging from the top down to the bottom, what happens when you drag the wrong set of files to the top and you overwrite the files that you were trying to keep, and then they're just gone? You do that to a photographer and you will never not only work for him again, you won't work for her or them again. You'll never work for any photographer that they know. That's why. It's all about troubleshooting, keeping yourself out of trouble. Okay. So, Capture One starts to fuck up on you, and you don't know how to fix it. You don't know what's going on. All of a sudden, stuff is like, it's all over the place. Stuff is not showing up. Your color correction that you're trying to do doesn't work. Your exposure doesn't work. You can't get your white balance tool. No matter what you do, you click on an image here, you click on the white balance tool and you try to use it, and you get the hand instead of the white balance tool. I mean, just all sorts of weird shit can happen. To reset the preferences for Capture One, you have to quit Capture One first. The preference writing in Capture One is live, so if Capture One is going and you try to throw away the preference file, you can do serious damage to your Capture One, so you do not want to do that. So if it's acting wonky and you want to fix it, quit Capture One. Go to the library, the user library that we were just talking about. Go down to Preferences. Not Preference Pane, but Preferences. And then you need to look for two labels in here. You need to look for anything that says Phase 1, and you need to look for anything that says Capture One. So weird shit happens in here. You will see that by the beginning here, it looks like it's alphabetical, but look what happens at a certain stage of the game. You will get to these comms, and it's like an extension before the file name. You need to look through all of these comms again to make sure. So what we're looking for is either Phase 1 or Capture One. And I don't see it in there, so I'm going to look down in here into Phase. Yeah. Yeah. So wait, now you have what's happening? I mean, I understand what happened. It crashed everything in the middle of all this. All right, so that's the new one that's actually come up. Well, you can actually put Capture One on this part of the video. So you don't need to go back. Put the Capture One completely on the side. And then you copy this up in the folder. So we've got those bits of information. Oh, actually, okay, yeah, they are. That's fine. So then go up to the, so go back to this one, go to back. So if that would be just copy the back of this one. So that you can work on, yeah. No, you can't copy this one because again, these are all in 21. So that you can put all of the pictures back, all of that. So it's the first time. So the second version of this. That's not the second. Oh, that's the second version. And then all of this files back here. So they're there. So if they're there, let's copy this. Again, this is at 22. So this is at 21. Because you lost that, whatever the preference file is, does not exist for this session. So it's not a session. Yes. Exactly. And then double click on this top one. So you go back to some other one. You'll be back to 20. You know, and go for 21 instead of 21. Same here now, doesn't know which one it is. So click on the top one over here, and this is the correct one. This is the control system. Oh, no, it's either shift or option. So right now you've got to go to the selector. So go to selector, go down to option key, that's where you see black. It's just depending on which computer. Some of them it's shift, some of them it's option. This one is option. Click on this. This is your library. This guy here. And so you can find it. So anyway, okay, so we're still looking for the preference file that says either Capture One or Phase One. So again, there are a whole bunch of them are sitting here at Apple, so we got to get past the Apple part. You could do a search for this up here and say I want Phase One or Capture One, but you got to do them both. Wish Apple would do some house cleaning. So right here you can see these are a lot of orphan stuff in here. These are all Capture One preferences in here. Anything in here that's got Capture One in here, you would actually select this and throw it away. So I would select all of these because these are all Capture One, and I would pitch all of those. That may not be enough. We also need to look for anything that's listed as Phase One. So I'm going to continue all the way down here to see if there's anything that's got phase in it. LNOP phase. And right here you can see this is a Capture One 12. You would want to throw this away. You throw all of that stuff away with Capture One closed. If Capture One is not closed, the minute you throw this thing away, it's going to rewrite the corrupted file and you won't be any better off. All the work that you did here is for naught. So anyway, that's how you would actually do it. And then start Capture One again and you'll be good to go. Say what? No, you do not need to do that because you're not having problems right now. Okie dokie. So back into Capture One. We're going to go up here to the very top. I'm going to select this guy right now. So I've actually renamed this session. So I would like to rename all of my files so that it has the same naming convention as the session. So if you hover over here, you can see they're all different names in here. We're just going to rename them all. So to do this, if you select the first image right here and you hold down your Control key and click on your drop-down menu, you will actually see that you can do a rename right here up at the very top. And if you click on rename, it will then make this editable for you and you can go in and you can rename the whole guy. That's not what we want to do. We want to do a batch rename for everybody. So in doing a batch rename, something to keep in mind, if you're having naming problems because of stuff shit's out of order, all of a sudden you're shooting and you're tethered and your images are showing up in the middle of your thumbnail stack. I see this happen to you guys all the time. What you need to do is that you then need to do a rename based on the date that it was captured. So your first job is to sort this. So go up to the two double-headed arrows and come down to date. Now these images are sorted in the date that they were shot in. So all of this stuff will actually be correct. So they're in the correct order now. And in the correct order, select the very top frame, scroll down to the very bottom of your image, hold down your Shift key and click the bottom one. You will see that it'll actually give you all of your thumbnails are selected and it'll say +9 more, or depending on how many you're not unable to see. This is unlimited. If I had 1,000 files in here, it would show me the top 12 plus 988 images in addition to that. Then hover over the very top one again, hold down the Control key. It's a right click, so however you're doing your right click, and we're going to do batch rename. Now the batch rename dialog box will open up and you will see it looks somewhat like the renaming box that we actually had here before. So in this setup that we've got going right here, I should be in 22 right here. it's looking at the job name of this. It's inherited this from when we did our files last time. So this job name, I need to actually change that part. And also the 3-digit counter is, I need a slash that goes in between these two. So I am going to get rid of the 3-digit counter. I'm going to put in a hyphen, underscore. And then in terms of the tokens, where are my tokens? Oh, click right here on this 3-digit part right here. I'm going to drag and bring my 3-digit counter back up again. Click on the drop down and do 3-digit counter. So now I've got the spacer in between the two. I'm going to say OK to that. And then this job name is, you can edit it right here. I'm going to change this to a 2. And that will be reflected in the new job name. And then I'm going to, you see right here, this is starting us at a sample of 21. I don't want to start this as a sample of 21. This sample is real. So that means my very first file is going to be, it's not going to be frame 001, it's going to be frame 021. I do not want that. So come up to the top 3 arrows up here in this part, and you want to come down to Reset Rename Counter. This thing matters down to here. If you follow what this thing is actually telling you, you can't go wrong. It'll tell you how to actually reset this part. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on Rename. It's going to say, you have selected RAWs and JPEGs. They should be paired, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to hit Proceed anyway. And now all of my files have been renamed, and they're actually in order in the date and the way that they were shot. And they've all been renamed all the way down to frame number 20, right down at the bottom. My next frame would be 21. Okay. We're going to go off tangent just a little bit. Has everybody got the rename done? Okay, so now let's say you've got this fixed, but you want to continue to shoot now into this session. So if we come back and you take a look at your camera into the naming convention, you'll see that this has gone back to that camera counter guy here. This is not what we want. So what we are going to do is we are going to click on the renaming for the next capture name. So again, I'm going to start shooting tethered again. I've got to fix this. This is no longer going to be my camera counter. I will leave name up there, underscore, and then a 3-digit counter. Click on my drop-down menu and do 3 digits. So this is the correct naming part right here, but you'll see it's saying, okay, it's going to start at frame 001. I already have a frame 001. It's right here. So that's not going to work. My naming convention is correct, so I'm going to go ahead and say okay to this. But now instead of starting at 001, because if I go all the way up to the top, you can see this is frame 001 right here. I can't have that happen, because if I do that, the next frame I capture will overwrite this file. And then the very next one I capture will overwrite the next one next to it. I actually need to start at frame number 21, because I've already got 20 of them in here. To do that, come up at the 3 little dots that are sitting right next to your capture naming, click on this, and say you want to set your camera capture counter, and then you would put in 0 to 1 and say OK. Then you'll see the number down here did not change. So hang on, let's do that again. 0 to 1. Then just do 21, not 0 to 1, and say OK. And now you've got 0 to 1 is going to be the next one. So when I do my next shot tethered, it will follow this one that's right here at 020. Does this make sense to everyone, what's going on here? So we've gotten through renaming, we've gotten through resetting counters, starting them up again, the whole 9 yards. That part's pretty good in here. Okay, so I'm going to come up to the very top. Again, we'll take a look at this image right here, or the next one down. Doesn't really matter which ones we're actually looking at here. I kind of like the ones that, let's go actually the ones that actually have me in the beginning, and we're looking at these guys right here. As you're going through when things are actually being shot, the star ratings here are actually just the numbers that you use. The numbers are 0 through 5. So typically the way most people edit is they will go through and they will do a whole set of ones to actually to start to cull the keepers that you'll have. So when you guys edit, do you go through and tag the ones that you want to keep, or do you go through and tag the ones you want to get rid of? Keepers, right? That's what I do, right? So as I'm going through my images, what I'll do is, we'll start here at the top one with me, so you can just do this with me. If you hit the 1 key, it'll actually put in a single star. If you hit the 3 key, it'll put in a 3 star. If you hit the 5 key, it'll put in a 5 star. If you hit the 0 key, it'll get rid of all your stars. It's much better doing star rating here than it is in Lightroom. I hate the way it works in Lightroom. But nonetheless, does that make sense what's going on in here? So again, this was a 5-star one, so I'm going to go back to 5-star. If you hit your, this matters here. So I want to show you something really quick that can screw you up. As you start to go through this, most people would use the up and down keys to actually go through this. So if you hit your down key, you'll see it goes to the next frame. Then the down key goes to the next frame. And that's all good and well, but look what happens if we don't have a single column of thumbnails. If we change this to doing the multiple thumbnails, and then I pull this apart to actually give me space to have multiple thumbnails like this, now look what happens. I'm going to go from this, and I'm going to hit the down key. I do not go to the next frame in my shooting. I go to what's underneath it in my context sheet. That will fuck you up. Instead, you only use the right and left arrow keys. So if I go up to my top one again and I hit the right key, I go to the next frame. The right key takes me down a row, the right key, so I will stay in order here. If you have multiple columns of this and you're only doing the down arrow, you're skipping every other frame. This, I've seen this bring a digital tech to tears, because all of a sudden the art director realized they had only seen every other image, and they'd made all of their picks. They'd sent all of their picks to India to be retouched overnight, and they realized the next morning that the art director had only seen half of the pictures because of this very thing right here. So it's only right and left arrow keys, never up and down. Doesn't matter if you only have a single column, even though it'll work that way. But I'm going to go back to my single column. Does this make sense? Are we good on this part? Okay. So the number keys, as you're going through this, again, you can just change it to any number that you want. For the colors, to color tag these things, if you click on the space for a color tag, you can actually come down and put in any color tag that you want. So it's a different way of actually sorting this. What most art directors do that I'm aware of is that most art directors will do star ratings to begin with. And then if you say, okay, I want to see all of my 5-star images. So they'll go through, they'll do 1-star ratings, and then they'll go through again, and they'll do 2-star ratings, and they'll go through it again, and 3-star, and finally they'll work their way up to 5-star ratings. And then to actually see your 5-star ratings, go over to your library, and then simply click on, again, remember, we've got a 5-star session albums preset that's already set. If you click on this, it will show you all of your 5-star ratings. And again, what I told you about this before, the problem with this is that I can't see all of my 5 stars at one time. I want to be able to see them all at one time, so I'm going to actually drag this in to make my screen smaller. And if I was working on a big monitor, I can get all of my thumbnails in here. If you select the top one, hold down your Shift key and select the bottom one, it will show you all 5 of your images here. If you hover over any of your images, so I'm actually going to not pick my white balance tool. I'm going to pick the arrow that's up at the very top. I'm going to pick this image of me. I'm going to just select right here in the middle. If you double click, if you hold down, if you double click on the face, hold down the space bar and double click, it will take you right into the face. If you double click again, it will take you out of the face. If you then hold down the Shift key and the space bar and double click on the face, it will zoom everybody in to that same spot. So now I'm zoomed in on the center of all of these images. Double clicking will take me back out. You'll see it a little bit better with the figure that's actually got the girl in it in the color card, because her face is in most of them, is in the same spot. Again, hold down Shift, space bar, double click, and you'll zoom into all of these. Still holding down the Shift key and the space bar, you can click and move all of these at the same time. If you let go of the Shift key, you'll only move one. If you hold the Shift key again, you'll move them all again. So it's simply a way, I can actually move this one over to get the wherever she is back into here again. There she is right here, even though it's her turned away. But now if I click and hold down Shift, everybody comes in here. Does that make sense, everybody? So it's just a quick way to navigate, to come in, to see. So then what most art directors will do is, these are all 5-star images. So what they'll do on top of this is that they'll add a color coding to this. So in this case, they've picked green as my #1 image right here. If you zoom out and you then stay out like this, again, hold down the space bar, double click, you can zoom in. Click on the drop-down menu. Green will usually be their #1 pick. Yellow, you can see there's a yellow one right in here, will be their backup pick. And then anything that they really know that they don't want out of here, most times they will simply change the star rating. But in this way right now, we can actually go through and do our 5-star ratings plus the green pick on this. To actually do that, it's the filter settings that's set up right here. So you'll see, I'm going to go back to all of my images. So don't do just your 5 stars. Go back to all of your images. This is now everything. And then take a look at your filters ratings right down here. The first thing in filters that you can rate are the number of images that have different star ratings. So you can see in this case right here, I have 12 images that have no star rating at all. I have 0 that have 1 star, 0 that have, I have 1 that has a 1 star, 2 that have a 2 star. So if you click on this 2-star rating right here, these are the 2 images that have 2-star ratings. If I click on my 5-star right down in here, these are the images that have my 5-star ratings. If you want to see let's say for some reason you want to see your 5-star and your 1-star, if you click back on your 1-star, it gets rid of the 5-star. In order to have this do multiple searches, you hold down your Option key and click, and now you've got both 1-stars and 5-stars that it's showing you. I don't want to see the 1-stars, I just want to see the 5-stars. So still holding down my Option key, I click the 1-star to eliminate it. But now what I want to see are my 1-stars plus my green. So if you come down, if you just click on green, you only get the green stars. You don't get, the green tags, you don't get any 5-star ratings. But if you hold down the Option key and click on the 5, you get them both. And this is the only image that satisfies those 2 criteria. If you want to get rid of all of your searches quickly, you come up to the search dialog box that's up at the top, and you see that circle that's got an X in it. If you click on that, that erases all of your search ratings right here, and you'll see that little icon doesn't exist anymore. Are we good on this part? Okay. If you come up to the Edit menu on the top of your Capture One, so up at the Edit menu drop down, you can do an edit your keyboard shortcuts. Some people love this. How many people in this room are real keyboard shortcut people? Okay, well, if you're sort of there, whatever, you'll be thrilled about this. So these are keyboard shortcuts, and you can see that there's a drop-down menu. So did everybody get to the, let me show you again. So up to the Edit menu, down to keyboard shortcuts. We're going to edit our keyboard shortcuts. You can edit any keyboard shortcut that exists in Capture One. It's actually much more powerful than it is in any other program that I know of. So if we take a look at the beginning part right here, these are all of your menus right here. You can see the Capture One menu. All of the stuff that sits here in Capture One, like preferences, all of that kind of stuff, you can assign shopping. You can assign a keyboard shortcut to shopping or to license or to check for updates. You can do any of these things. But what we want to do right here is we want to set keyboard shortcut assignments for our color tagging. So to do that, if you come up here and you look at your command key, we're going to come down to, I think it's in select. We're going to look up here at the top. It's either in adjustments. Yeah, it's in adjustments. So you'll see in the adjustment drop down, I have color tag right here. If you come then to adjustments right here, click on your drop down menu and go to color tagging right here and open this up. This is where you can put in keyboard shortcuts for all of your color tags. You will notice that there are 3 of them that are already done by default. So the first one is red, which is a minus, because most people when they're going and they're culling imagery, they'll flag anything that they don't want with red. They'll flag anything that they might want with yellow, and then they'll flag everything that they definitely want with green. So if you're not a star person, if you're a color person, these are defaults that have existed in Capture One since version 3. So they're all old school. You can make your own though. However, this is still the default set. So if I come here to 1 right here and say, okay, I want to change the keyboard shortcut, you can't do it because this is the default. It's going to say the active keyboard shortcut set cannot be edited. If you want to edit this, you need to first create a new custom list. Click on create, and then we'll just call this Versor's list. You can call it your name. I'm going to call it Versor, and then give it a date because I've got 100 of these, and say okay. This is now the new set. You can see it right up here, Versor 2024. And now when I click on my non-keyboard shortcut, you'll see I get a little blinking icon in here that'll allow me to change this. But look at this right now. You can see that under adjustments, reset is Command R. Try to type in Command R for this again. So Command R, and you will actually see, you get a warning down here at the bottom, and it'll say, Command R is used by reset and will be reassigned. I don't want to do that, but this will be the warning. This is how you know that you're actually changing a keyboard shortcut that's already been established. So I'm going to say, no, I don't want to do that. Instead, I'm going to double click on this. And I'm going to say, no, I don't want to do that. So hopefully this is going to let me change that keyboard shortcut. I'm going to hold down Command and hit 0. You did what? Oh, anyway, I'm just hitting Command 0 to go back into it. Then I'm going to go down to my red and do Command 1. My orange, Command 2. My yellow, Command 3. My green, Command 4. My blue, Command 5. My pink, Command 6. And my purple, Command 7. Ooh, didn't like Command 7. And then simply hit close. Now when I come over here to this image right here and hit Command 7, it tags it with a purple. So again, this is a lot for most people. Most people don't want to do their keyboard shortcuts, that the keyboard for every single color, but most people will do a keyboard shortcut for, again, red, green, red, yellow, and green. So you can either go back to your original set or set it for anything that you want. So I'm going to go back in to my Edit Keyboard Shortcuts. Again, we're going to have Versor is 2024. I'm going to select this keyboard shortcut here, and then I'm going to hit the delete key. In older versions of Capture One, it actually made your none color setting the delete key. You want to make sure that doesn't happen. For my red, I'm going to leave it at Command 0, because 0 means I want to get rid of it. For my orange, I'm just going to get rid of. For my yellow, I'm going to do it Command 1. And for my green, Command 2, and then get rid of blue, pink, purple, and auto adjust is not part of what I'm changing, and hit close. And now I can go in and do Command 0 is red, Command 1 is my yellow, Command 2 is my green. It's an easy thing to remember. So this gives you keyboard shortcuts for all of your color tagging. I know right now you're sitting there thinking to yourself, I'm never going to fucking use color tagging ever in my life, right? That's not the point. The point is that you know how to do this. You've got an art director who's frustrated by the editing process, and you say, let me just set up a quick set of keyboard shortcuts for you to make your editing a whole lot easier. You don't have to like pick that thing and grab the tag and all that stuff, whatever. Who's going to get called back for the next day? You. That's all what this is about. Are we good? All right, guys, we're going to get through one more subsection of stuff right here, and then we'll call it a day. I know it's been a lot. No, because we've only got 20 minutes left. By the time you get back, it'll be time to leave. Okay, so if we take a look, we're still in the library part. We've gone through the whole first part at the very top. We've gone through all the session folders and how all of these work. We've looked at our albums, our session albums, and pretty much how these guys work. We've looked at our session favorites. Again, I don't have any session favorites, but this was, again, subfolders when we did the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, blah, 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 blah. We've already talked about what the system folders are. Again, this is a breakdown of your hard drive, whatever's on your hard drive. That's what is right here. You don't control anything in here. You just find stuff in here. That's all it is. So our next thing down is going to be our filter set right here. And we started out in our filter set and we looked at a couple of things and we talked about a couple of things about how to sort of like build additional albums into this. But we can actually use the filtering set to build a set of smart albums for us that have the conditions. So instead of coming up here in your session albums and clicking on the drop down here and doing smart album, instead of doing that part, we are going to actually build smart albums based on our ratings right here. So to see what that's like, I want everybody to come down and click on your 5-star rating. And then also, it looks like I've got 2 green ones right now. Let's make a couple of more of our selections in here green. So I'm just going to click on another 1 or 2 and just tag them as being green, just so that we've got a little bit more to work with. So I've got 3 now that are actually tagged green, or I've actually got 4 that are tagged green. So I want to actually show both of these right now to be visible. So remember, if I click on my green tagging right now, it unchecks my 5-star. If I want multiple versions of this, you hold down the Option key. So I can click on my 5-star. You can actually add more to this. If you wanted your yellow one to also be a part of that, so I want all 5-star yellows and greens, hold down your Option key and click on that. These can get really complicated in terms of how much you actually put in here. So you can see now I've got 3 criteria that are actually in here. So now I've got everything that's 5-star plus the green and yellow ones here. I'm going to hold down the Option key and get rid of the yellow one because I don't want to complicate this too much. Then come up to the filters, the name that says filter, and right across from that there's 3 little dots. If you click on this, you can actually say in this, level filters, all set up, blah, 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 blah. Sorry, it's not going to be here. Oh, it's probably up here now in my session album. Nope. Sorry about this, guys. Oh, it's these little 3 dots right here. So not the little 3 dots up by filter, but right underneath it, the little 3 dots were in the search dialog box. Click on those little 3 dots and it will populate your image with whatever you've already built as your selection in here. So I've got all of my 5 stars and I've got my greens right here. It's built this automatically for me. and it's actually saying, now if I wanted to change this somehow, I could still edit this, but at this stage of the game, I don't need to actually change that part. I am going to say I want to create a new smart album, and I might as well create one with the current images because these are already there. So I'm going to click on create. Wow. The difference in what? It's only going to then put in the images that I've already got. That's all it's going to do. So I'm going to call this, again, 5-star green. And say save. And now when I take a look at my 5-star green, here are all of my images. If I then change this first image right here from green to red, it's actually showing me that still 5-star in spite of the fact that that is no longer satisfying this criteria. So I'm going to get rid of this smart album and make sure it got made correctly. So back to my filters. In my rating, 5-star, hold down my shift key and option key and click on green. So this is the images that are both. Click on my flyout menu here and say, oh, this is a conditional thing here. So I'm saying match all of the following views. You can say here, you could change that to match any of them, but this is going to be all of the following rules. So it has to be 5 stars, it has to be green. I'm going to go ahead and just create a smart album. We'll call this 5-star green. And say save. And now when I click out of all images, hopefully that'll show me everything. I'm going to clear my search criteria and then click on 5-star green, and it's just these 2 images. If I change this image from green to red, it goes away. Does this make sense what's going on in here? Okay, I'm going to go back to all images again so that I don't have any ratings actually changing here. If you take a look down underneath filters, you'll actually have other things down here. So you can see you'll have dates. If you open up date, they're very specific dates in here. This thing gets populated only with the number of the information of the images that you have in here. So what this has done is it's actually looked at the date of every single image in here that was actually created, and in the filtering it will only put dates that actually correspond to something that's already in here. You will notice if you go through these dates, there's nothing in here that is a 0. All of these correspond to something that's actually in here. So this is actually an incredibly powerful tool that you can actually work with here. There's also keywords in here. This will not exist unless you have a keyword in here. So I have actually got art and craft equipment on one of these. If I click on it, it'll show me this is a JPEG that somebody else created, but it had this art and craft equipment keyword in it as a part of it. If there were no keywords in here, this keyword box would not exist in this group right in here. So you can see all of these images in here, some of these all have a single keyword. In terms of exported in here, none of these files have been exported here. That's why this is actually giving you this tag. There are camera serial numbers in here. Again, I want to see all of the images that were taken with this one camera number, serial number. I need to clear my filters first. Sorry. Clear my filters first, and then click on this single image right here. This same image was created with a camera that had this serial number. So again, you get where this is going. The make of your camera, also in here. The focal length of your lens. And then if you are geotagging, you'll actually have place in here. So this is listing as no country. So this is an amazing list. You can add to this list of possible filterings. To do that, you come up to the 3 little dots that are up next to filter. Click on this, and what you want to do is click on show and hide filters, please do this with me. Click on this, and then this will come down, and this will show you every possible thing that you could actually have that you could do a sort about. So if we start going down, you can see it's got color tagging, but let's say you want dimensions to show up. Simply click on dimensions, and then as we start to work our way down through here, I'm going to collapse these as we're going down through here. Here are all of your dimensions here. They're actually showing up, and you can filter by dimension right now. So as we continue to go down through all of this, you can see that there's other camera owner, if that's been put in. You can actually do stuff that's based on ISO. Oh, let me see the ISO part of this, and then scroll down, and you will see that there's an ISO setting in here, right here. All of the images that were shot with a 100 ISO, all the ones that are shot with a 200. You can see this one that's got no listing at all. That's because the metadata didn't contain an ISO setting in here. So all of this is available for you to continue to blow this stuff out to make your searching incredibly powerful. This leaves Lightroom in the dust. Are there questions about this part right here? Are we good? All right, I'm going to close that part up. We are almost done here. That part's show and hide. Okay. Last thing we're going to talk about here really quickly, and then we're going to end it here because we've gotten through the library panel right here. So all the settings that we've changed in here, when we actually built this smart album that was the 5-star green, and then we've got in here the search criteria, we added ISO, and we added focal length, all of that. All of this stuff is remembered in this preference setting right here. So to see what that actually means, we are going to create a brand new session right here. So I'm going to simply click on this and do new session. And we're going to build a session for today. So for today would be 20240223 underscore CCC underscore C1 Pro demo. Again, this is going to go in my pictures folder. I'm not going to name anything else. It's not going to open in a new window. I'm merely going to hit OK to that. And now when we do this, take a look. You don't have any of those session albums, that smart session album that we made, the 5-star green. It's not here. If we take a look at our filters, in the filters right here, there is no ISO. There's none of that. All of that stuff is gone. But if you click on this drop-down menu right here under Sessions, this allows you to navigate back to previous sessions that you've made. So if we go back to the previous session, the one that we were just working in before, and bring that up, all of my custom smart albums are in here. All of my ratings based on dimensions and ISOs, all of this is remembered in the session. So the last takeaway from this is if we go out to your Finder or your desktop in Windows, if you are asked to share a session with somebody, you want to share this whole thing because this preference file here has all of that information in it. It has that smart album is in it. It has that ISO as a filter setting in it. It has the dimension filter setting. All of that is maintained in this. And so many other things that you do, any of the other templates, other things that we set up into Capture One, all of those are written to this file. And if you give this to somebody and they do not have this file, all of that is gone. They don't get any of that. They will still get the metadata. Again, if you take a look inside this Capture folder, inside the Capture One folder at the very bottom, all of the settings that are in here are actually, these things are all the settings, the color tagging, the star settings, the development settings, if you do any development settings, if you make shit black and white, if you do any of that kind of stuff, all of this is maintained in this XMP. So this is different than in Photoshop. If you do a change in Photoshop, in Camera Raw, or you do a change in Lightroom, it creates an XMP file that sits right next to your RAW file. That is not how it works in Capture One. These settings are all put off here in a separate folder to keep this a little bit cleaner and a little bit neater so that you don't have every other file here is an XMP file. They're just kept off. Does that make sense to everyone? So if you only give somebody your raw files out of this, they will lose everything. You won't have any of your color settings. You won't not have any color tag settings, no star ratings, no none of that. That's all gone. Make sense? Okay. I think that's enough for today. So let's really quickly take a look and see what's going to be due next week. So this got us through this part right here. I'm going to go back to modules. So for week number 5, which we're in right now, you guys only have readings and videos for there is no shooting stuff for your homework. So if you click on the session 5 resources, I'm asking you to read through the Ultimate Tether Guide, Troubleshooting Tethered Capture, and Metadata Overview. If you want to, you can look at, there's videos in here. If you're already comfortable with the difference between sessions and catalogs, you don't need to look at any of this stuff. Optimizing tethered capture is probably worthwhile. You'll notice that all of these are based on Capture One version 10. Nothing has changed in this, so this will talk you through customizing your workspace. This will be how to name files and rename files. We've gone through all of this. We did not look at editing metadata or keywording. We will look at that next week. We also did not look at exporting files. And then this is, I'm going to ask you to look at this thing right here. So this is a simple workflow guide written by an old digital tech of mine, Luke Schneider, for Capture One. If you want to put the fear of God into yourself and really understand how much you need to be really serious about what goes down in this class, watch that video, because that's your competition. It will put the fear of God in you, and you will have a very different resolve when you come back here tomorrow, because this is what the pro level of working in Capture One is like. This guy is the bomb, and this is who you're going to be up against. And I will see you guys next week. Guys, I will also put up the video that we just recorded of this tonight, and I will send you a link in an announcement on our website, on our Canvas site, with a link to it. See ya.